And we're live, Steve. How you doing, brother man?
Good, good. I have a really bad headache. I'm not sure what's going on, but just all day long, just feeling like bad headache. But
Yeah,
must be Halloween.
I can see that. I can see that. Happy Halloween, man.
Yeah, happy Halloween. Sure, I'll wear this for the next 2 minutes so that I can say I did it, and then I'll take it off.
Oh, you mean you can actually take that off?
Yes, actually.
Oh, you had me going, man. I figured that was actually embedded in your skull.
Right. Yeah, I was trying to let out the demons. You got to pop up. They say that in the old days, when people had bizarre behavior, they'd drill a hole in the skull
Yeah.
to let demons out, and maybe some bacteria in while they're at it. But hey,
They did all kinds of crazy things back in the day with demons and bad humors and all of these other things.
Right.
Well, but maybe the reason that some of the people out there today are so screwed up is because they don't have holes drilled in their heads.
Yeah.
The ancients may have actually been onto something.
Well, it's possible. I mean, never know. But I would think probably drilling a hole would be a good way to, breach the body and let salmonella and all that good stuff in. But speaking of salmonella, he was one of the writers at Cars magazine.
Salmonella was one of the writers. Actually, that name was used.
Yeah. Of course, Tony DeFeo, one of my influences back in the 80s was your work for the earliest Mopar action magazines, of course. And then
stop it, Steve.
Yeah. So
well, you're one of my inspirations now, man. I watch it. Your channel is exploding. You're doing so well.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Actually, my friend Donovan Manzuro, pop in here, Donovan, if you will. Yep. This is Donovan. He's, the thing of it is,
how's it going, Donovan? Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, Donovan watching the show. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the thing of it is, it takes a team, right? I mean, I'm all about the automotive thing, but as far as uploading and editing and stuff like that, Donovan handles that stuff. So it's, it's a thing where I guess I could learn it eventually and someday maybe, but it's so good not to have that burden because it's, it's hard enough kind of with the material, let alone shooting.
The thing is, you're hitting it perfect. You're doing these 2-3 minute videos. I get a notification every morning, and you got a video. The Keiko one, I enjoy everything you do is, and you've got the formula down perfect. And the views, your sub numbers you're closing on 10,000 subs now.
Yeah, 11 today. Yeah, and it's
11,000 subs.
It's been 5 weeks, which is wonderful. I think what it is, when I first, I didn't leave Motor Trend, but when Roadkill's Junkyard Gold came to its conclusion after 3 seasons, the idea was, oh crap, now I got to go, rent a crew of 5 people. We talked about this before, but the reality is, I've kind of woken up to the idea that if you provide, snack-sized nuggets, then that's a good start. We always say season 2 we'll get a drone. You know what I mean? And
you're doing just don't mess with the formula you have. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's killer. It's perfect. And I see the view numbers are you're getting over 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 views in the first day or two on a video, which is right on target. Like you should get approximately 10% of your sub number should be your views in the first day. So like I expect to see around 20,000 views in the first 24 hours. So with 1,000 subs, you should expect to see. Well, actually, no, you're doing great. You're at 10,000 subs, you should expect to see about 1,000 views a day. So you're in your first day. So you're doing fantastic, man. You're right on target. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
You're going to be a YouTube sensation.
Well, a lot of help from you. I appreciate that, of course. And just a thing where I guess I should have done this a long time ago, but as they say, I wasn't ready or whatever it is, But yeah,
you had a gig and that was your thing, and then that gig dried up, and then boom, here you are, and you were born for this. Like literally, bro, you were born to do YouTube.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And the thing of it is, it's just I love giving cars a voice. And in fact, last week, Donovan and I and a couple other buddies, we all went to a junkyard, a place called Winkle Auto Wrecking in Milford, New Hampshire. And a guy named Gary LaPlante, who some of your viewers might know, but he's sort of like an old New England kind of guy, and he's been collecting Mopars, he speaks like that for 35, 40 years. And I've been to his place a bunch of times, but he has all kinds of old Mopars. And what he'll do, he has a truck and a trailer. He'll travel all over the country to buy cars and drag them to his New Hampshire forest collection, and there they sit. And he parks them out and stuff like that. But the K car, I thought to myself, when I went in there at first, we did find some cool stuff like an air grabber, 70 Roadrunner, stuff like that, a real car, a tree fell on it, stuff like that. There'll be a video on that a little later on. And every day we try to learn something new. But the K car was awesome. I can do more with that. I mean, the K cars were pretty neat. I remember, I didn't love them, but I appreciated them. And of course, without the K car, we wouldn't have today's cars.
I love K cars. I always loved K cars.
Yeah.
There's just something about them. The thing about the K car, if you took a 4-year-old kid and you said, draw a picture of a car, okay, he would draw an exact K car.
That's right.
You know what I mean? This is the simplest thing.
Yeah, I remember
Let me say hi to some of our guys here. We got Joe Brennan, Doug Nard, we've got Oliver Hills, Steve Staglione. Right, if I'm missing you guys, I'm sorry. But, welcome. I think I saw Fubar up in there someplace. Yeah. Oh, the Kickendall, Mr. Will, Fubar. So all of you guys, welcome. Happy Halloween. I want to do something different tonight, man, because cars. Let's go to the strange stuff. So if anybody out there has any haunted car stories, haunted garage stories, haunted tool stories, just general ghost stories. Have you been probed by aliens? You know what I mean? You have a Bigfoot turd in your on your mantle? Steve, I call it the unified field of weirdness.
Okay.
Right? So follow along there. You have all of these things, right? And you can just list them right off, right? You got Bigfoot, Mothman, flying saucers, ghosts, demons, blah 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 blah. All of these different things, and they all have exactly the same thing in common, right? They're there, and then suddenly they're gone, and they don't leave any sort of evidence behind, right? Enough people see them, enough people take pictures of them, enough physical evidence kind of remains of foot tracks or whatever it happens to be, but they kind of just fade out.
Yeah. And it's not concrete evidence. It could be faked. That's the thing. It could be faked. It could be real. But the thing of it is too, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I remember, the Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that. I guess scientifically, there's a sense that body of water could not support a creature that large, and it couldn't be a relic from the ancient times, because something like that would not have evolved in that area. So it's probably flights of fancy. But there's one area that I do find to be very compelling. And, it's not ghosts, those shows like, Ghost Finders and stuff. I know some of the production people on those, and one of them said, hey, somebody has to make the thing go bump in the night, wink, wink. And some of that stuff is very staged and it's very bogus. But one thing, the UFO thing, I mean, here's the thing. When I was a kid, I was 1977 when Close Encounters came out, and I had UFO fever. The whole country did. Every 7 years, statistically, there is a UFO flap.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just kind of like it's not mass hysteria. Like this is 1967. This is Look magazine came out with this thing. 1967. It's basically a one-shot, on UFOs and are they real, and blurry photographs in the sky, stuff like that. But reality, here's the thing: the difference today is that the Pentagon and the Navy have released footage, which they say it's real. It's not somebody with Photoshop. So that's very different to me. It's interesting. Now, some would say, well, they're UFOs. Well, I mean, they may be Russian or Chinese, but these things are legitimate. And it used to be until just a couple of years ago that, the Project Blue Book, it's swamp gas, it's geese at 90,000 feet flying 600 miles an hour. Right? But now there's actual evidence. And I think the cat's gotten too big for the bag. And whatever is being seen, I think is real. So, that's interesting. Whereas the ghosts and that kind of stuff, no, I don't go there, except on Halloween. Tonight's the one night, which we can talk about.
Well, now, you see, I lived in a haunted house.
Yeah.
It was a definite thing. We had, in fact, it got to the point where we had an investigator after investigator coming through.
Wow.
And it got to the point that there was a guy named Lloyd Auerbach. And then Steve just started with a haunted Hemi block.
Yeah. Okay.
And he started with a 392 Hemi block that was originally from a Top Fuel car. So I'll tell the whole story in a minute. But it got to the point that there was a guy who did a show called, what was the name of that show?
I don't remember.
You remember the guy though? Lloyd Auerbach. I remember the name.
I don't remember.
There was a show on one of the networks that did, they go to places and they want to actually come to my house and film an episode there because we had it was like one investigator after another came through, and this is before any of the TV shows, like the Ghost Hunters and Ghost this and Ghost that.
Yeah.
And they wanted to actually come and shoot an episode at my house in New York.
Wow.
And
Is
this
Amityville?
started
What is this, Amityville, or what town? Which town? Brooklyn or
Staten Island.
Staten Island? Okay.
Greek Hills in Staten Island. The house was on Cape Avenue.
Well, we'll find out in a minute. Yeah.
But it started when I bought a load of 392 Hemi stuff. I was building a nostalgia top fuel car.
Okay.
And I had a Sunshine dragster in the garage. So I bought all of these parts and I unloaded them. And one of them was a block. It had been used. And I set it behind the car. Okay? Went in the house that night, and all night long we're hearing just like that.
Yeah.
All night long. And we're going crazy. We're going all through the house trying to figure out where is this sound coming from. It was very distinct. Okay. Then I got to the point that every time we would get up to look and see where the noise was coming from, it would stop. So it'd be like, and then I'd say, Cat, go check over here. And as soon as she would get up, it would stop.
Wow.
Okay. So this drove us crazy. We didn't sleep that night. It was the nuttiest thing. The next morning, I'm in the garage and I'm walking around the back of the car. And as I walk around the back of the car, my leg brushed against the block.
Right.
And the block was sitting on the back face and the dowels, so it wasn't sitting flat. And as I brushed against the block, it went. Kathy comes running out. It's like, I just heard the noise. I just heard the noise. And it was that block. And I touched the block and it made that exact noise. So all through the night, that block was rocking itself in the garage.
But that went on for weeks.
It went on for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's saying it went on for weeks. I remember it being just that one night. But
Now, the next question, was the block in the garage, and is the garage different from your house? Was it loud enough you could hear it in the house, or was the garage and the house close?
Yeah, no, the garage was in front. It was in the house.
Okay.
It was a high range.
So the other side of a room or of a wall, you could. Wow. So
Yeah.
what was rocking the block is the question.
Exactly, and why did it? As soon as we got to investigate where the noise was coming from, why did it stop? So it's like it wasn't like it was wind rustling or anything like that. But that just started the whole thing. But right after that, like within a week or two after that, my tenant, we had a downstairs tenant. She comes upstairs. My cabinets are open and closing. My refrigerator's open and closing. There was all kinds of stuff happening in her apartment. And her apartment was adjacent to the garage where we had all that stuff.
Yeah.
So there were things happening constantly. And at one point, one of the investigators and she was from California, and she used to write books. She had heard about what was going on because I was reporting one guy, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is real." And then they came back and brought back another guy, and they were like, right? So it just kept going. So finally, I get this call from a woman in California, and she says, "I'm a psychic investigator, blah, 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 blah." And it's okay. And I was sitting in the back room of the shop, right? Because it was the garage, and then in the back room I had all of this hangy stuff, and I was sitting in a chair. I had a chair. I'm sitting back, and she says, she says, just like this, she says, he misses being able to smoke. He likes when you smoke. I says, "Who's this?" She says, "His name is John." I says, "And where did he come from?" And she says, "He met you in Indianapolis. He followed you home from Indianapolis." And I had just been in Indy for the U.S. Nationals.
Yeah. Did she know this? Did this lady know this? You'd been to Indianapolis?
She knew nothing of it. She
Okay.
knew nothing of it.
Yep.
But she was telling me where he came from, what he misses, why he likes being around me, and so on and so forth. And she was like, "Oh, this is what he." I said, "Well, how do we get rid of him?" And she was like, "You don't want to get rid of him. He's like a guardian." I said, "Okay, fine." And I just accepted it from that point. So let's go fast forward about 5 years ago. We were trying to do a reboot of Cards Illustrated magazine.
Okay.
So online. So I had the idea. I says, let's do a story called "Is There Drag Racing After Death?"
All right.
So
Was Was that with Dennis Pitzenbarger by any chance?
Yes, it was with Dennis. Dennis and I had some issues, but we became good friends afterwards. Dennis is a good guy, but he's a little, right? So, we clashed, but he's a good guy. So, it was about 5 years ago. So, I contacted a local psychic. Her name was Rebecca Buxton, right? And I said, I'm working on a story for an online magazine called "Is There a Life After? Is there drag racing after death?" So she says, "That's pretty neat." So I says, "Well, let's get together and we'll go to a drag strip and see if you could pick up vibes, because I knew one abandoned track here, somebody got killed there. So I was like, maybe we could go there and get some, So make a long story short, she meets me at a Starbucks over in Smyrna, and she sits down and she starts describing the guy who was following me around, the same person that the psychic woman. I asked her about several different drag racers. I asked her about Jenkins, Pete Robinson, Jungle, who else? And she picked up strong on Lieberman. She was like, yeah, and I didn't mention to her by name, but she hit me back with, I see a blue car, I see flames, I see something on the side of it, I see crazy hair. Does this guy have crazy hair? And I was like, well, yeah, it was a mural on the side of the car. And she picked up Wild Willie Borsch. She says, yeah, he's a narcoleptic. He can't stay awake. I said, yeah. So it's like she was spitting facts as fast as she could about things that only somebody who would be very intimate with the history of drag racing and the people involved in drag racing would know. So that sold me like permanently.
Wow. And is this engine block still around? Was it well behaved or was it problematic?
So here's what happened. I put that engine together and I put it in a car. I pushed out head gaskets twice on the jack stands. The car never actually made it onto a drag strip. Then I decided that I wanted to go to 426 instead. So I pulled this motor out and I freshened everything up and I sold it to a guy in the Midwest. And I said, this thing is, I said, from pan to injector, everything is perfect. All you need to do is add fuel lines to it, right? And I showed him what fuel lines to make and everything. And I put the tune-up on the car, on the engine, so there was no ifs and buts about it. But he takes it out the very first run, and this thing saws itself into sections and just total, absolute destruction. So yeah, no, that block, it was haunted, and it was haunted in a bad way.
Right. I can't say that I've had much in the way of ghost stuff, although I grew up in a house that was built in 1720, right? And my brother has a daughter. She's now like 26, but when she was about 5 or 6, she came downstairs asking, who's the lady with the black hair in the rocking chair upstairs? We're like, what are you talking about? There's nobody here like that. So, she still says she saw a lady. It wasn't scary, but you got to wonder. I still have the chair. It's in the other room, although there's nobody in it right now. I will say that, well, this is not the same thing, but when I was at Hot Rod Magazine, I was covering the NMCA drag racing series, the National Muscle Car Series, whatever. We go all over the country, and it was quarter-mile racing until this one day when it became 8-mile racing. But a fellow named Donnie McCallum passed away. This was at Beach Bend Raceway in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Beach Bend, right? Beach, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It was a pro street Camaro running probably in the low 9s, high 8s. Well, the car got sideways, wiped out, and he was killed. A sad thing. So they stopped the races, and for about 40 minutes, people are wondering what's going on. And then, as they say, nobody dies at the racetrack. Well, what do? The van comes to the starting line on its way through to the finish line and it says coroner on the side. No, but down it goes, the coroner's van anyway. So they get it cleared up. Well, 3 days later, I get back to LA and I break out in hives. The weirdest damn thing, I had itches all over my body. And, I went to see a dermatologist. He said, sometimes, did you see anything stressful? Yes, I did. So, it was kind of a weird thing. Not that it's a spiritual thing at all, but with that said, I've never reacted to anything ever. But that was a weird thing. It was gone within a week, but just big patches of itchiness on my stomach and my legs, and kind of weird, But anyway, I wrote about.
Sounds like a lightweight case of shingles.
Maybe, yeah. They say stress can trigger stuff like that. But it was sad. It was a horrible day. It was Father's Day. This poor guy who dies and stuff. So anyway,
I know. I've been through that several times. I know the feeling.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. You go to the race to have fun, and I thought to myself, this guy's widow and his son driving home with the empty truck and trailer, and But anyway, when you go racing, there's always that possibility. You hope not, but you never know. You know what I mean?
It is part of life. I mean, you know what I mean? It's.
Yeah.
So who do we have? Hey, Kat. Let's see. So if you guys have any topics along these lines you want to throw out there, right?
Yeah.
Do it. Amityville Horror. Yes, that was my family. That was my cousin Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Butch, Ronnie, whatever you're gonna call him. That was he's the one who killed his family.
Oh. Okay.
That started that whole thing. 73 Galaxy says this is spooky. What was this here? Iceman 2K10 Weirdness. The unified theory of bitches happened to me multiple times when I was dating. Text like 4 girls, not a peep. For the 2 hours, 3 would literally text in the middle of each other. Yeah, well, okay, that's like shared consciousness, right? That's all part of it. And that is part of the unified field of weirdness. How many times have you like thought of somebody and then boom, within like an hour or two, they're on the phone?
Yeah. Well, synchronicity, I guess they call that, and just things clicking and stuff, But it's generally a good thing. I tend to imagine there's good stuff in the world, and you get what you give. A guy like Adolf Hitler probably tormented to his very last days. You hope, you know what I mean. But if you're good, the assumption is the spooky stuff doesn't find you. Knock on wood, if there's such a thing. I don't know. But to get back to the UFO thing, well, go ahead. If there's something.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the thing of it is, they don't even call it UFOs anymore. They're AAPs, the anomalous aerial phenomena. And the thing of it is, there are 3 videos you probably know: the Tic Tac video, not TikTok, Tic Tac. And the thing of it is, I don't want to be thought of as a UFO guy, but all I can say is that the last few years, just the idea that the Pentagon has acknowledged the idea that there are 3 videos taken by F-18 Super Hornet pilots. This guy named Commander David Fravor, who is sort of not the mouthpiece of this stuff, but he was on Joe Rogan and stuff, and a very intelligent, well-spoken guy describing his 10-minute encounter with a 40-foot-long white Tic Tac and how it was dancing with him, so to speak. He flew down to it. They sort of maneuvered around each other. That's eye-opening to me, and in a way, that's hot rodding. Whatever the hell these things are, they can zip and zap and be gone. And the idea is that anything living inside of that would be splattered inside of it. The G-force thing, 300 Gs, you wouldn't be alive. But so there might be a force field or something going on. If it's China or Russia or us, we've leapfrogged physics, and that's astonishing. But if it's not us, well, I don't know, whatever. If it was bad news, I think we'd know it by now, because this kind of stuff's been acknowledged for a long time. And it might just be something else, but I don't know. It's weird.
I think they've been with us forever. I don't think it's. I think they check in every once in a while. We're kind of like the ant colony, you know what I mean? And they check in and they make little arrangements here or there, and then they go off and do their thing again.
Yeah, you've jumped a few steps to say that. I'm with you. You know what I mean? I could see that. I watched that show Ancient Aliens, and to me, it's
okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I like it. Sometimes they're chewing the same fat over and over and over. You know what I mean? And that's okay. But with that said, I'm totally open to the idea that, and I know some people who can't think about stuff like that for personal reasons. You know what I mean? You think about devilry and you invite Beelzebub into your world. Well, okay, I don't know. I'm not really in that department, but I find it fascinating, and it's an amazing thing that that the Pentagon has acknowledged the existence of videos that show things that shouldn't be. So that's called proof. You know what I mean? For the first time ever. And I'm sure that the pictures we see in these old magazines and stuff like these things here, they're people's snapshots, and with the technology of the day, they did the best they could. Maybe it really was a hubcap thrown up into the air, and that happened a lot. A lot of people seeking fame and notoriety and just being, prankers. But this stuff,
it's not. That's not the first time that the Air Force. I think the Air Force is doing like a self disclosure thing.
Yes.
I think that they've known, right? So if you go back to 1947, which was right immediately after the war, and during the war, there were a lot of people say that fighter pilots would say things called Foo Fighters, which would hang off there. And I mean, they were by all description UFOs or flying saucers. that term wasn't coined until 1947. There was an Air Force pilot, I can't remember the guy's name, Mantell, I think it was.
Right.
I mean, this was, and again, see, this is such a long time ago, I remember this, Mount Washington, I believe. And
Yeah.
this is in 1947.
Arnold, Mr. Kevin Arnold or something Arnold.
Kevin Arnold? Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Kevin Arnold.
You're skipping discs.
He crashed.
Oh, Mantell. Yeah, Captain Mantell. Got him Mantell.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he was a P-51.
Right. That was an Air Force, that was out in the open, as far as, they weren't trying to disclose anything like that. And it was like right after that, the Roswell thing happened. Right. And it was like after Roswell, that's when all the secrecy started. That's when all of the craziness. But when you look at the technology, you got to go even further back than that. In 1897, there was supposedly a UFO that crashed in Texas.
Right. They buried the body or something.
They buried the body.
Right.
And they won't let anybody near where the site was. There's a marker. Right. There's like a grave marker for the spaceman. Right. But they won't let anybody exhume, assuming it's even still there.
Yeah.
But the whole thing that happened so okay. Look at the technological leaps that we took. You go 1900, right? You barely had the internal combustion engine. Yeah. We had no ability to fly, right? There was no radio, and we barely had electricity.
Here's first man killed in a saucer. Yeah, and his name was Thomas Mantell Jr. And what they're saying here, he was piloting a P-51 Mustang. He claimed in radio contact to the tower, he was chasing this big thing.
Right.
Some say he went so high as the altitude, oxygen starvation made him hallucinate, and maybe he blacked out, the plane crashed. That's generally the description from Project Blue Book on that, but maybe he really did see something, and maybe he was chasing something. I don't know, But yeah, this book it's basically a primer on that stuff, and it's from '67 of all things,
What was the date on his accident? Does it say in there?
Well, what's it? Okay, the year. Okay, hang on a sec. Yeah. But it says here, first pilot killed by a UFO, and
I'm curious if it was before or after Roswell. I think it was before Roswell.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's see here. Let's see. Yeah, it says here that it was in January 7th, 1948. So 1 year after.
After Roswell. Yeah. Okay.
And it was a P-51 propeller plane, not even a jet, But here's the thing too, if you read enough of this books on this stuff, and I enjoy reading them, and apparently nuclear bases, American missile silos and stuff, Malmstrom or something like that, Air Force Base in the Midwest, something massive floated over that and shut down the nuclear weapons. Now, this is the thing. You see this crap, this stuff on these shows, and it's often repeated over and over and over. And I don't know, it's possible that, our messing with nuclear weapons is the thing that has attracted attention from somewhere, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. I'm sounding like a quack when I say this stuff. But
no, not at all. You don't sound like a quack at all. My belief is that there are a couple of different races of alien, okay?
Yeah.
And it's like good alien and bad alien.
Yeah.
And what I was saying was, if you go back to 1900, okay, there was zero of the technology that we know today existed. Okay, you go just 45 years later,
right?
Which would be like the difference between now and 1985.
Yeah.
Okay. 45 years later, we're splitting atoms.
Right.
You go from barely having electric light bulbs to splitting atoms, making atomic bombs in the course of less than 45 years. How did that happen?
Yeah.
And then if you look at Roswell, right? You look at everything that happened immediately after Roswell, because the transistor popped up right after that. So 1947 was the accident. 1951 or 1952, the transistor comes about. Mm-hmm. And then all of the modern technology that we have today comes from that introduction of the transistor.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that one species equipped us for self-destruction with the bomb. And another species has been countering that by feeding us the technology to rise above the levels of nuking each other.
Yeah, that I see that there's two possibilities. As a writer, right, I have to see all three sides of things. In my personal thought on it, and then the A and the B, right? So I try to. We all try to do that. And what I take from that is, a lot of folks say, "Well, how did we get this far so quick?" Well, but the Industrial Revolution happens in 1860. Steam, petroleum, oil gives way, wood gives way to coal, gives way to oil, gives way to nuclear eventually. And I like to think that it was a time when things gelled. You know what I mean? Things gelled, or somebody gave us the keys to the kingdom. Somebody being, ooh, I think things gelled. But then again, what do I know? But we've really made a lot of progress these last 50 to 100 years. Cell phones, stuff like that. But I think it's things gelling, technology gelling, and this technology and that one joined together. One plus one equals 50 in some cases. Silicone, electricity, and suddenly transistors. And I don't know how that work, but it could be. But I'm also open. It's possible there might be the deep state and something feeding us little nuggets of good and bad. Maybe. I don't know. I'm open to it. I am, because I have to be. Because I don't know any yay or nay on that stuff, But I keep going back to these videos, and the whole Tic Tac thing. It's only been the last 5 years that this has been legitimized, really, by people saying that it's quite real. In fact, there's things that supposedly, would I want to see a thing like that? Would you want to see a flying star? Would you want to see something as big as a Walmart store hovering over your house 50 feet at night silently? Would you want to see that? What would that do to your brain?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay. I'm down with it. I'm down with anything that the other side wants to throw my way. Let's go. You know what I'm saying? It's like, there's a lot of people that they're afraid of death. They're afraid of, no, and don't take this the wrong way. I'm not even the slightest bit suicidal or anything like that. Right. But I can't wait to find out what's on the other side and, go master it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Whatever it happens to be.
It triggers.
I welcome the flying saucer above the house.
Yeah, the hot rodder gene kicks in, kind of that want to discover thing. I get that. The thing of like, what is this thing? I want to find out. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that I find fascinating. Supposedly, the Taconic Parkway in New York State in like the mid 80s, late 80s, people were pulling over to look up and observe massive triangles silently floating through the sky. A lady walking her dog said if she wanted to throw something, she could touch it. So I'm thinking, wait a minute. I heard a little bit about this maybe, but why wasn't that front page news over the globe? It's kind of weird, but people say it's weird. Police officers, even in Belgium, apparently a similar thing happened in the 1990s or something like that. Massive thing. It's kind of weird. You got to wonder.
In 1980, I was cruising. It was middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was cruising around with a friend of mine. This was on Staten Island. And we followed a UFO across the island along. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Staten Island, but we followed this thing literally from the one end of the island to the other. And where we had to stop was at the end of the island by where the Elizondo bridge was. And we stopped along with, there were probably the 4 or 5 other cars that had seen this. Yeah. And we all stopped at this intersection and we all got out of our cars and we all gathered around. And we were like, do you see what I see? And they were like, yeah, I see that. Are you sure you see what I see? Yep, that's definitely what it is. So there was probably, 10 people in this, and we were all confirming to each other that we were seeing what we were seeing and that it wasn't our imagination.
What was
it?
It
was a UFO that, like a classic, like pulsating orb type of thing that flew. So you've got the 2 towers on the Elizondo Bridge, and this thing flew right between the towers, not above them, but right between the towers, and it was sizable enough.
Wow!
That and it was not. I know it went straight over Brooklyn and then turned towards like Manhattan.
Huh.
There was not a peep about this in any of the news.
Right.
I figured the next day this is going to be like crazy because this thing was so prominent, it was so big, and it was over such a populated area, and so many people saw it. Yeah. I figured the next day the news is going to be all over the news. Not a peep about it.
Yeah. Well, I know, John Lennon, apparently in 1977 or so, was living at the 20th floor of a building, whatever, and May Pang, his other girlfriend, not Yoko, she was looking out the window, or he was, and he says, May, look at this. And he wrote about this, and apparently there was a large orb sailing along at like rooftop level.
And that was probably the same thing. We probably saw the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, these stories, you keep hearing these stories, but to me, again, the three videos, the Tic Tac, the Go Fast, and the Gimbal, those three videos to me are those I can take very seriously because, well, they're from the Navy. The other stuff is like, man, what do you make of this stuff? You know, I mean, with the Navy stuff, those videos now, everything else starts to sound kind of like a whole other thing. It might be quite real. Not that, you know, John Lennon, you know, he was going to party a little bit, but they said, you know, no, we saw this. But they were shocked also that the rest of New York City didn't see this. And these things were sitting through buildings, you know, just cruising along. But it was silence. That's the thing. I guess most people don't look up when they're walking down the street. You know what I mean? You're just not looking up. And maybe you should. I don't know. But again, it's a little
on this particular thing on that night, you didn't have to be looking up. Yeah. It was if you were any distance, it was just part of the sea. It was part of our horizon. It wasn't like way up in the air where you can't make. No, this thing was close, right. And it was dead silent. It moved slow, like I couldn't give you the exact speed, but it moved slow enough that it was like you knew the air wasn't holding this thing up, and it was dead silent. There was no noise whatsoever. So, and I mean, I've seen a few things like that, but that particular one, like, always stood out in my mind. And it's funny that you say the thing about John Lennon. I didn't know about that. And he lived in a place called the Dakota, and I used to deliver to Yoko. I spent the summer when I was 15 working in the World Trade Center as a messenger.
No shit. That's cool. To Yoko.
Yeah, she was sweet. You'd never know that she was anything but like just a regular housewife. She'd just come to the door in a robe and sign for whatever it was and throw me a tip, and then, you know. But yeah, and I didn't even realize she was Yoko until I actually read the thing. Where it was going. But anyway, make a long story short.
Yeah.
It's a good possibility. I'm gonna have to look into that. I bet you the timeline is probably about right, and we probably saw it at about the same time.
Well, I guess the question is, Lennon was killed in '79, I think it was, or was it '80, somewhere around there. When it was before that, it might well be maybe the same night. Was it around?
I don't know the exact night. It was around 1980. It could have been 1979. You know, it was in that.
Yeah, because if you saw this thing after he was shot, well, then it was a different thing. But if you saw it before he was shot, well, then maybe. You know, I mean, it's quite possible. But interesting. Anyway, I'm a big Lennon fan. He's great.
Yeah, Jerry Johnson saying the UFO sighting of Phoenix in '97 was big.
Phoenix Lights. Yeah. You know, it's funny, that whole thing at Barrett Jackson, right? There, you know, there's a lot of people there. Rick DeBrule you might know him from the broadcast. He was a newscaster in Phoenix for years, and he was kind of, his thing was Rick DeBrule here on the beat for consumer advocacy. Like he'd, you know, go to the garage that was ripping people off. You know, that was his thing, right? But I said, Rick, did you see the Phoenix Lights in '97? He says, no, I did not. He says, okay, what do you think about that, Rick? Well, you know, I didn't see it. But here's the thing: Fife Symington, the mayor, I guess the mayor, whatever it is, of Phoenix, did see this, but downplayed it because he didn't really want to promote a panic because they really didn't have the answers for it. So it became night flares, which were shot hours later. But lots of folks saw a massive boomerang just silently moving around. Interesting. You know, it might be man-made, but I don't know.
Well, I've seen video of that whole event from several different angles, and then somebody in a neighboring town close to it videoed the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it moved in that direction, and so it wasn't that it was falling, it was traveling. Because this guy was far enough away that he wouldn't have caught it when it was over Phoenix, but he caught it while it was over his place. Danny Boyd says, do aliens drag race their flying saucers? Two things on that. There was do you remember Cracked magazine?
Yeah, the Mad Magazine Cracked, sure. Yes,
They did a thing, this was like probably around 1972, 1973. So they had Eric Von Daniken did Chariots of the Gods.
You're out of focus. You're good. Okay, you're out of focus for a minute. Just want to.
Yeah, it's this camera because of light. So Eric Von Daniken wrote Chariots of the Gods in 1869. Cracked magazine did a spoof on that called Hot Rods of the Gods. And they were speculating that in ancient times the Earth was used as a drag strip by aliens. And they had all the different evidence, you know. If you could find a copy of it, I haven't seen it since I was like 11 years old, but it stuck in my mind. Hot Rods of the Gods.
Yeah.
But Dan, along with that drag racing thing, okay, everybody knows Area 51. Everybody's heard of Area 51. And everybody knows this guy, Bob Lazar.
Sure.
Who's the guy who claims to have back-engineered alien technology and so on and so forth. What a lot of people don't know is that Bob Lazar was a drag racer, and he raced jet cars.
Yeah.
He was friends with Garlits. And the only conversations I've ever had with Garlits had to do with UFOs.
Yeah,
We're
that's
both
true.
interested in the same thing.
Yep.
And he and Garlits would compare a lot of notes as far as this sort of thing goes. Because Garlits was considered himself to be a researcher, like, and that's this is going back probably 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And Garlits actually, for a time, branded himself not as a drag racer, but as a UFO researcher.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, sure. Well, it's funny. And maybe about 7 years ago, I went down to Garlitz's museum for Street Rodder Deluxe magazine. It wasn't Hot Rod Deluxe. It was Street Rodder. It was a premium magazine, Street Rodder, whatever it was. And I went down there to shoot a full page on Garlitz's museum. So he says, hey, walk around. So in his office, there is a huge green alien. And it's a little Martian. It's kind of funny, but it's a large Martian thing. And he says, yes, I was in an airplane and there was a large tube flying next to us. And I says, well, that's cool. But I didn't say, how about the rest of the people on the plane? Did they see it too? I didn't go there. But yes, Garlits likes to talk about UFOs. Another thing too is back in the 60s, a guy named Tom Tiganelli ran a car called the UFO.
That's right.
And it started out as a 65 Plymouth A990 ultra wheelbase car. Was black and gold at Shadow Woods Automotive. We also had a Charger, but on the front, you always had a thing on the spoiler. UFOs are real. It's the Air Force.
Of course.
I wanted to find Tom Tiganelli and ask him what's up with that thing. So he's probably still alive. He's a little older.
I believe he was killed in that car.
Oh, okay.
The steering shaft went through his throat.
Ooh, was that in the Charger?
I believe it was a Charger. I could be wrong. He may have lived.
Yeah.
But there was a thing with that car where he crashed it, broke the steering wheel off in his hands, and the shaft actually went through his throat.
Ow.
So somebody who's more familiar may know more details on that. But yeah, that was a UFO Charger.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. But yeah, I remember that car was like a 69 Charger, had a Daytona nose on it. It was all fiberglass and stuff like that. It had no wing on the back, if I remember correctly. But yeah. So interesting. Huh. Yeah, but Tom Tiganelli, the UFO. Yeah. But yeah. So I don't know. It's so funny. It's a weird thing. I mean, I'm happy though that today, for a while, maybe even now, you've been branded as a quack or whatever it is. But I hide behind the Pentagon and the Navy's admission and sharing of certain facts. So to me, that's kind of cool. The door is open, and whatever this is or is not, well, it's interesting that we're talking about it rather than calling people silly or demented or whatever. And in the insult, Jimmy Carter apparently in 1972 was you saw something, so it used to be you talked about it, you were minimalized and made a joke of. But
you had the whole thing. So evidently, right, the story goes, and there are people that corroborate this, whether or not it's true, I don't know. But evidently, Eisenhower had a meeting with aliens in 1954.
Right.
And there was a whole thing. There's video of these of what appear to be UFOs over the White House.
Right.
Passing over the White House, and that's the most protected airspace on Earth.
It is, yeah. That whole thing that was kind of interesting because there's a lot of ways. Like, here's the thing, right? When Roswell that happened, right? The newspaper headline said "disc spotted" or "disc crashed disc." I want to know who wrote that headline because, as you know, writing headlines for magazine articles or newspapers, sometimes there's a little bit of editorializing and fun. Let's sell some copies. And the thing of it is, during World War II, the Foo Fighter thing, and in Sweden, discs and flying saucers, that notion existed in the public mind before Roswell. That's a fact, right? So maybe some newspaper copywriter said, hey, this thing crashed and it's called a disc. Next day, okay, we're kidding. So nobody ever digs in who wrote that headline and what was their sense of humor. You know what I mean? That's the one thing I always wonder about, But if it's really a headline that was for real and they backtracked it, which is what the story is. But I always say, a little bit of due diligence, some editorial work, man, because, who wrote that headline and were they tongue in cheek about it? That's never been explored.
Did you ever hear about the time I did, when I was doing Cars Illustrated magazine, I did the Cannibals from Space Ate My Baby cover?
What was it? Cannibals
from Space Ate My Baby.
I don't remember that one, but I remember Tim. And go ahead. Yeah. I like that.
So Joe Oldham, who's dead now, Joe Oldham was the consultant, was Schneider's consultant. Okay, and I got left doing cover lines. I had to do all the titles and blurbs and all the other shit.
The funnest part of the job. It can be.
So I hand in the cover. Now we're past deadline. Okay, this thing was supposed to go to print like, the week before. So we're way past deadline. Of course, the Schneider money is okay, but I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna block. So I write out all the cover lines, right? And I had to set it. It had to get approved by Joe Oldham before it went, right? So I do the cover lines, send it to Joe. Joe's like, this is terrible. This is terrible. Think yellow journalism, he tells me. His words, exactly, right? Think yellow journalism. So I'm like, oh, you motherfucker, right? I got, I was a car guy, man, and I'm putting cover lines of stuff that I want to read, but that's not what he wants. He wants to let's sell it. So I'm pissed off. It's late now. Everybody's on my case about this. So I was like, fine, you want yellow journalism? Here's the National Enquirer, bitch, right? And I wrote, cannibals from space ate my baby. And I handed it to the art department in the morning, right? This was the bang line on the cover.
Yeah.
So the girl, what was her name? Marilyn was the art director over there, right? And she says, are you sure you want? I said, yeah, just send it. I said, just that's it. Cannibals from space ate my baby, and he went home, right? So the next day, or not the next day, 2 days later, we get the brown lines back and the proof of the cover, and there it is: "Cannibals from Space Ate My Baby."
On the cover or the lead?
On the cover, I approved it.
Okay.
All right. Grover wasn't around. I approved it. It went to the printer. We got back the initial copies of the magazine all had "Cannibals from Space Ate My Baby" on the cover. They flipped out. They melted down. But I had already quit. At that point, I already quit my job, right? So I wasn't on the payroll. I was getting paid as a freelancer. So they couldn't fire me.
Yeah.
I cost Schneider like $100,000 with that one. They had to recall the magazine.
Where are they? Do you have one of those?
I don't, but I do have a copy of Popular Mechanics that they printed as a goof. Yeah. That says "Cannibals from Space Ate My Baby," but Oldham was the editor of Popular Mechanics.
Yeah, sure.
So to get under his skin, somebody ran a goof cover of that magazine that said "Cannibals from Space Ate My Baby."
Now I have to ask this: it's not nice to speak ill of the dead, and my opinion of Joe Oldham was that he was one of the East Coast writers in the '60s who quite often pooped on Chrysler, maybe rightfully, maybe not so. But later, as the editor of Popular Mechanics, he gave Gromer a lot of work, etc. And I used to do the Popular Mechanics New Car Buyer's Guide. I would ghostwrite that for Cliff Gromer.
I did one of those too.
For $100 a column, while Cliff was maybe getting 3. Well, that's okay. We got to earn our way up, don't we now? You know what I mean? But I didn't know Joe as in any way other than just something of a legend, I guess. Was he open? I know his son Scott, still alive and well, good dude. Got the Trans Am.
Scott was always a good guy. I did not get along with Joe Oldham at
I get it. The impersonation. I can say. Okay.
I did not get along with him at all. I mean, I'm not going to speak on Kind of the Dead, and I have respect for Scott. Scott's a good kid. I haven't told him since he was literally a kid, but he was a good kid. Yeah. And so I'm not going to speak unkindly of the dead. Let's just go with it. He was very successful in his field.
Yes.
And we'll leave it at that.
All right. I know sometimes the fun police sucks. Fun police suck. You know what I mean? I've been in a few situations where it would have been fun to do this. It would have been harmless, but somebody's sense of propriety would have been dinged or whatever because some fun thing was going to happen. It would have sold issues. I bet you that Aliens Ate My Baby, that would have sold some copies, big time. But it's
but he told me, think National Enquirer, think yellow journalism. So I was like, fine, you want that? That's what you want? You got it, baby. So, I sent it. He didn't realize he was dealing with a 25-year-old New York City punk. You know what I mean? Don't light my fuse because you don't know what you're going to get. Right?
Yeah.
The thing about Joe, I'll tell you a quick story about Joe, the kind of person that he was. Joe would set up his desk with a lot of loose things. So he had a couple of cups that were filled with pencils and doodads and stuff like that. His desk had all sorts of things on it, okay? And he did that so that when he wanted to make a point, if he was having a meeting or something, he would brush the stuff off of his desk and it would make this big, he did this a couple of times. He never did it with me.
Drawing.
I know of this through Gromer, actually. I know of the whole thing. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
I can't. There you go. Wow.
Yes,
And
that was Popular Mechanics. And somebody did this. This wasn't my copy. Somebody did this as a fuck you to Joe.
now he must have had a bit of sense of humor by then. Or?
No, he had no sense of humor.
Okay.
He had absolutely no sense of humor. He had the ability to eat Chinese food. That's what he had. He had the ability to eat Chinese food and the ability to smash stuff off his desk to intimidate the workers that he. That was Joe. That was Joe. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
But damn it, Steve, he could eat Chinese food like nobody else. Nobody could eat Chinese food like Joe.
Yeah, the monosodium glutamate. Maybe it went to his head. You know what I mean?
Something went to his head.
In fact, he wrote a book, which I got a copy of, Muscle Car Confidential. It's a good book, but I was a little surprised in that he describes in some cases lying, which, well, whatever, so be it. But with that said, never meet your heroes, I guess they say, except for you, Tony. So,
but here's the thing, man. He made up a lot of the stuff. Yeah.
There it is right there. It's a good book. And if you have a collection of High Performance Cars magazine or Street and Strip Supercar or Superstock and FX, they were all Magnum Royal, Marty Short type magazines. And in this, you will see those stories regurgitated, but with Joe Oldham's modern take on what really happened. And it's kind of fun sometimes to see that. But I would have thought he was a little more easygoing, but hey, what do I know?
Okay, but you see, that's why Joe hated me. Okay, and I'm not going to say that lightly. Okay, Joe hated me, right? It was like a passionate thing, and it was because Steve. And listen, you know me well enough. You know my history well enough. Okay, I was the real thing. Like Joe was a writer. Okay, and he played the part of being the street racer and all of this other stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and they would stage stuff and all of it. But no, see, I was the real thing. So when I went street racing, I was really street racing in real street races. You know what I mean? It's like, and I was surrounded by the people he the people he wrote stories about were the people that I hung out with.
Right.
Did you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he resented that because like he made this persona of himself based on being, the
tough
man
guy
on the street, where I actually really was the man on the street.
Right.
He hated me for that. There was like no getting around that. That stuck in his craw,
I mean, it came through in the magazines for sure. And, I have to say that, in our little street racing scene over in Palmer, Massachusetts, I had a 68 Hemi Charger, then a 64 Max Wedge clone. I had the quickest Mopar around, which, ran high 12s. There was always a Chevy with a bottle that would run 11 someplace, just make you look stupid. But with that said,
was running hard, man. 12 was running hard with that.
Yeah, it was okay. But with that said, I always had a copy of Cars Illustrated next to me. I'd go to the Weird newsstand, pick up a copy of it, and then read it, and then have some McDonald's food, grab a six-pack. Yeah, grab a six-pack, head over to Palmer, hang out Route 67, have a few soda pops, and then line them up and run, and your magazine was next to me with Cliff Gromer. And who's Tim? The Tim guy. It was hilarious, but it was questions and answer with Tim.
Tim was, okay, so I'll tell you the story about Tim. Okay. Joe insisted that the magazine have a Q&A, a technical Q&A, okay? Yeah. Insisted it had to have it. Now, the reality of it is, no magazines actually got mail from people saying, I'm so-and-so, and I've got a blah, 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 and it's a blah, blah, blah. What do you think if I do a blah, 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 right?
Well, I'll confess something in a moment. Go ahead.
Okay. So, it was bogus, man. I couldn't do it. It was bogus. And he insisted. They just absolutely drummed it into me. You're the technical editor. Do a technical question and answer. I don't care if you have to make up the questions. All right. So, and all of this stuff always happens on deadline. Okay? Always happens on deadline. So we're on deadline. I have to produce a Q&A column for the morning, the very next morning. Okay. So we're at Morgan. What the hell was his name? The artist, Morgan.
I don't have a copy in front of me. I can look up the masthead, but it's in the other room. But
okay. I can't remember his name, right? But we're at his house. We're having a party at his house. This is in Jersey, right? And there's It was like a staff party. It was an unofficial staff party. We all got together. We're blitzed out of our minds, okay? And I mean, like to the point that, like, you see in like dragons. I mean, it was crazy, okay? So we're watching a Monty Python and a Holy Grail.
Okay.
Okay. And you get to the part with Tim the Enchanter.
Okay.
There are those who call me Tim.
Okay.
Well, man, that's just like, wow, it just drilled itself into my head. I was like, Tim, right? So I went right from the office, right from the party to the office. This is like 4:00 in the morning now. And I was like, fine, man, Tim is going to do the question and answer, right?
Yeah.
So Tim made up a bunch of questions, and then Tim answered those questions.
Yeah.
That's where Tim came from.
All right.
So next morning, the girl Marilyn comes in who does the art, right? And she says, well, we need a column photo for this.
Right.
Okay. I says, I don't have one. She says, well, who's Tim? I says, I made Tim up from the guy from the movie last night. She says, I still need to put a picture on it. I can't send it without a picture. So there was an IBM salesman had come by.
Yeah.
And the IBM salesman had left his card. And I looked down on her desk, and there's the card with this guy's picture on it. And he says, here's the picture. She says, I can't use that. I says, make it work. She says, well, what do you want for background? I says, I don't know, just put a bunch of question marks or something back there.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, I had just met Indian Larry, and his whole symbol was a question mark. So that's where the Tim picture. The picture of Tim is an IBM salesman, and she put a wig on him.
Wig and some lips or something like that.
Right. And then question marks all around his head.
Right.
The question marks were an homage to Indian Larry, and that's where Tim came from.
That's cool.
And it took off. It was like the most popular thing in the magazine. So I only wanted to do it the one time, but we ended up having to do it a few times.
Yeah. It's funny. When I worked with Cliff for a while, Cliff Graham, I was writing for Mopar Action, and I said, Cliff, what's up with Tim? He goes, yeah, that was something Tony came up with. A salesman left his business card, and Tony put some scribbles on it, and that became Tim. But it's if you get a chance, Cars Illustrated, look at some 87, 88 issues, and then about 4 pages in, you'll see Tim Q&A.
Do you have a copy of it?
It's in the other room. I can run and grab it.
Yeah, go grab it. I'll check out some questions over here.
Okay. All right. Back in a flash.
Hey guys, I'm sorry if I feel terrible because when Steve and I start talking, it's like everything else goes by the wayside. And I don't mean to ignore you guys. I'm so sorry, but that's just how it goes. Let's see. No, that's not nice. Hang on. It's not nice, but it's true. Multiverse. Yes. Peter Kovacs, I'm a big believer in the multiverse.
Okay, what is that? Like alternate realities?
That there are multiple dimensions to our reality, and that's where my unified field of weirdness theory comes from. That these things all blink in and out of our dimension.
Yeah.
They all have that same basic characteristic. You have people who are filming a Bigfoot, and then the Bigfoot is walking, and it disappears. People are filming a UFO, it's going like this, and it just disappears. It's like these things blink in and out of our perception.
Yeah. There's one guy named Lou Elizondo who's formerly with the Pentagon's ATIP program. And Lou, he seems to be very credible. And he's formerly from the Pentagon. And he's a guy maybe about 45 or so, but you'll see him quite often on a lot of the shows on History Channel, but he's also a very serious investigator guy. And he does say that the Pentagon, he's got a security clearance. There's certain things he says he can't discuss if he doesn't want to go to jail. But Lou Elizondo, very sharp dude, but he describes that there's likely a cloaking device or a means, and sometimes when they're visible, it might be malfunctioning. So the other word is, if you're looking up, there might be all kinds of shit flying around that you don't see, which is probably a good thing. But sometimes dogs look up and do weird stuff. You got to wonder if maybe, what you don't know won't bother you, I suppose. Who knows? I'm trying to find Tim. Any idea what issue?
Probably around in that issue.
Oh, maybe. Here it is. Here's Tim right here.
Yeah, there's Tim. Yeah. That was our official question and answer guy, Tim.
I remember when I saw that, what are these guys smoking? I want some. And it was good stuff. Yeah, Tim.
We were very hungover from that night when we did that.
Now I have to a little bit of a mission myself. Carcraft magazine, the esteemed Carcraft. I mean, I love the magazine. Been around since 1953 when it went from Honk to Carcraft. But I was their freelance tech guy for them. But there was a thing called Ask Anything. It was their column on tech. And John McGann was the editor at the time, and he had me doing Ask Anything from my home in Massachusetts. And he'd send me this month's bunch of questions. And it was typically, I own a 97 Toyota Tacoma. I want better fuel economy. I kid you not. It was not really the kind of stuff you could use. I said, John, I can't bore the readers with the guy's question about his Prius. This is Carcraft. He goes, well, if you can make things up that are legitimate. So I did. I would sometimes find things that say, okay, what's pertinent, LS1 oiling issues or whatever it might be. So sometimes, because there was nobody writing in, I would have things. Yeah, so if you read anything in Carcraft, a lot of the times they're things that were created because it's nothing new, and there's no sworn statements in the magazine that it's all not real, but I mean it's real, but at the same time it can be frustrating trying to get good material because readers don't usually write in.
But that was one of the things that I hated about the business because there was so much bogosity. A lot of those magazines were I mean, a cornerstone of them was a question and answer. Yeah. And I knew for a fact that they were all bullshit because nobody ever writes in those questions. Right. Nobody, you stop and you think about it, okay? The magazine comes out every month. You're sitting there, you've got a problem with your car, you're trying to figure it out. You're going to write this thing out, and put it in an envelope and send it, and hopefully it gets read and gets answered. Like there's like a 3-month lead time. It's like, who has a question about their car or something to do, and that's going to wait a whole season. You know what I mean? I'm having a problem in July, but I'll figure it out by Thanksgiving if these guys answer me.
The thing I get a kick out of is sometimes looking in the past. This is nothing new. And in fact, today, Donovan and I, we did 4 episodes of the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast. They'll run in the next several weeks. And in one of them, there's a chapter in each segment called press commentary, numbers crunching press commentary. And there was a magazine called Speed Age, and somebody wrote into Speed Age saying, hey, tell me more about the 67 Dodge Charger trunk spoiler. I see them, but then I don't see them. You could tell it was a Dodge public relations piece. They wanted to get the word out. The trunk spoiler was available. Here's the part number. And it was a triggered question created. So it's nothing new. And back in like 63, I'm thinking about buying one of the new Max Wedge crate engines for use in my 32 Ford. What's the part number? That kind of stuff right there. It's nothing new, but sometimes it's bogus and self-serving. But in my case, I always try to make it legitimate, like oiling problem on my Corvette or differential issues. What's a better differential for my LS car, whatever it might be. I'll get the Borg Warner piece from Australia, the 9-bolt, or that whole thing. But I try to make it legitimate and real. But that's not always the case,
Steve, hang on a second, Cat. What's going on?
Steve's getting some feedback. He's got a bit of an echo.
So you've got it. I don't hear an echo. I hear you sound.
You can hear it on the TV.
You can hear it on TV.
Yeah.
You've got feedback that people are hearing on the TV.
An echo.
An echo.
I don't hear it here.
I don't hear it here, but I'm on the computer. She's watching it on the TV inside, and she says there's a bad echo.
Huh. I don't know. I don't hear it here.
But you can hear it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't know. Use the mic.
Can you man the questions and fish out any good ones?
Man the questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
We need help here, man.
All right, we need to share.
We're ignoring our people. So the thing about magazines, right? And like I said, so much bogosity involved. I just couldn't be a part of it. They did a Buick, right? They were trying to push their V6. This is right before the Grand National thing took off. So Oldham and Grover or whatever scammed through Marty Shore, who was a Buick PR guy at the time, scammed them out of a Buick, a Regal with a V6, and then Kenny Bell for parts and all these different manufacturers for parts.
Yeah, it was Project 6 or something like that, right? It was a regular car you guys turned into a muscle car, right?
Well, that was the gist of it, okay? But this thing was a turd. Yeah, right? They couldn't even get it to start. So I was like, okay, I'll get involved in it, you know what I mean? And we'll see what happens. So I went and I got it started. I took the whole thing apart, put it all back together again, started it ran, okay, but it was a turd, it was a stone, and I wrote it as such, you know what I'm saying? I go to all kinds of, everybody in the food chain came down on my ass about that, you know, but I had to call a spade, man. It's junk. It doesn't, it's not worth your effort. And then the saving grace was like immediately after that, they put the intercooler on the Grand National, on the T-Type, and that turned everything else around. It was kind of like, if we got that noise, they gave me a T-Type, and I ran out and ran 1385 with the thing, and I was like, okay, well, you redeemed yourself.
Yeah. I remember that too. In the 80s, you know, the Iron Duke. I remember reading Hot Rod magazine as a spectator, and when the Iron Duke four-banger came out, there was a whole press in the magazines to get the Iron Duke to be the new normal for small block Chevy, and it was actually articles in Hot Rod, and where they had the Iron Duke engine as a potential performance engine. I thought,
and the Quad 4. The Quad 4 was another one. They were pushing out, oh, this is the future of performance. This is everything. I was like, the Quad 4. What a steaming pile of turd that thing was.
Yes. You know, and I will say, you know, I've been involved in a few situations where when I was at Hot Rod magazine, remember the Dodge Dakota RT?
Sure.
We might have talked about this. We did just hit stop, but it was a neat vehicle. I loved them. But Mopar Performance was selling a performance kit that didn't really add up that well, but it was about $6,000, or maybe $3,000 or $4,000 worth of stuff, and it didn't work. So we did a story called Dog Kota, and it ran in Hot Rod right next to a Dodge truck ad. Oh yeah. And I was called on the carpet to the publisher. Hey, Steve, what's up with this? I says, I merely told the truth. And my editor, Ro McGonigal, says, yeah, this is what it is. This is okay, fair enough. We could have been fired for that, you know, by a less honest publishing empire. But, you know, sometimes when you know, they always say that, you know, the best way to stay out of court is to best way to win in court is to stay out of court and never say negative stuff. Kill the story if it's really that bad. But the trouble was, we had a Dodge mechanic at Glendora at Dodge. It was his Dakota RT. He spent weeks. I spent weeks going out there shooting this thing. And finally, when the story came out on the chassis dyno, it made another 18 horsepower, which was probably the cool down. And it came down to the fact that the computer killed power because the transmission wanted to live. So it actually had the ability to snuff its own horsepower increases, which was like, what? Why sell this stuff? Why sell this stuff? So, you know, but that was Dog Kota. That even Dakota RT owners clubs, they sometimes hate me because they think I hate Dakota RTs. They're cool. I mean, there was a pickup truck with a 5.7 or 5.9, but there was nothing better, no passenger cars yet. So I get it. It was a cool little truck, but you know, when the parts don't work, you got to tell it like it is, or kill the story, but you got to tell it like it is. That's what we
It's Halloween. We got to get back to the Halloween stuff here. Dardella Burton. We have a real UFO landing spot in our backwood. We would go to see it all from when I was young. 50 feet around with 3 square spots on the ground. Nothing but yellow magic powder grass grew there.
Well,
so I've heard of stuff like that too, where there are UFO landing spots and then nothing ever grows there afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'd love to come visit. Let me know when it lands again, man. You know, or get your camera ready because the world needs. And the thing of it is too that I mean, there is footage of these kind of things. A lot of it is people with computer programs, and there's no doubt you can create amazing stuff. You know, with science programs. You know, but there's so many people now with smartphones and with cameras. It's just a matter of time before one of these things is truly and properly captured on camera by a person. Or if it never happens, so be it. But so far, the military is doing a fine job. But they do say often, they being everybody, that the stuff that we get to see is usually degraded intentionally so that you don't see the ability of the optics to see enemy things. So they degrade it so you can't see. So the Russia and China can't see how damn good the sensors really are. They degrade it no matter what it is because they can't give away the whole secret. So anyway, beyond that, can they really show you the part number on the Tic Tac? Probably not, because it would be too frightening or whatever. You know what I mean? Or the weird guy. I don't know. You know, it would be strange. You have to ask what kind of a government would acknowledge the fact that we're powerless over something like that. That's a shaky place to be if you're a government.
Could go down Paul Shea. Paul Shea, there's a video of Bottle Rocket with an anomaly in the background. There's actually 2, Paul. There's 2.
Yeah, it is.
There's one. Okay, so we shot. This was last year. Okay, after I first got the car running, and we did a test hit on the road in front of my shop. Yeah. Right? So as the car passes a phone pole, there is a light anomaly that happens at the phone pole. It's diagonal going up, and we ran the video. and we put it in slow motion, and you can see clear as day. It's like there's a thing there. So that was one that we pointed out. But there's a second one, and I don't remember which video this is in. Okay, but I'm talking. We're doing a video, and I'm standing in front of Bottle Rocket. That's like behind me. The car's behind me, and there's an orb that just spends a second or two doing like this thing, and then it disappears. And so, yeah, Bottle Rocket actually has some sort of thing.
Well, I guess the question, could it have been a firefly? Could it have been a okay, all right.
And then the comments, if you go back and you read the comments on that video, there's 1,000, oh, it was this, it was that, it was the other thing, but they're not actually looking at the video, because if you look at the video, it's nothing, it's not a firefly, it's not a moth, it's not a bug or anything like that. It's a legitimate light anomaly that goes diagonally up. People are like, oh, it's a shooting star. No, shooting stars don't go up,
right.
Down, right?
Yeah.
And it happens immediately as the car passes.
Wow.
Well, like I said, maybe a month or two after that, we're shooting a separate video, and I'm standing in front of the car, and there's an orb that does its thing. And we left it's in the video. We didn't point it out or make anything of it, but I remember watching it saying, "Oh, geez, that's an orb."
Wow. I will say on my website, the Steve Maggs YouTube channel, there is a UFO behind me. We put it there on purpose. I'm telling you, it's a little saucer. It actually is. It's there was an F-18 pilot with his cell phone in the cockpit took a picture of a floating cube in the air. Google that. That image you can grab and suck into your. I got a buddy of mine, Ryan Convery, who actually put that in. I said, Ryan, I want a UFO behind me. So I'm standing there like this, and there's a UFO over my shoulder, which I don't make reference to, but it's there if you take a peek. Anyway, but it's not real. We put it there. Okay, so
we had you're new to YouTube yet. Give it a little while, and you're going to get all these people contacting you to sell these things. They're going to give you whatever it happens to be, right? Because now you're an influencer, right? So they're going to like lighting kits and floor mats and eyeglasses. You just name it, okay? They're going to bombard you to sell this stuff. I just don't go there, okay? So we had somebody who wanted to do dash cams, okay? And I was like, not interested. And they're like, well, we'll give you two. Right, so you can do a video with the one, and you can give the other away. Would that work for you? I says, yeah, that'll be fine. I will do a video with your dash cam, but you have to. We're gonna do giveaway. So like, okay, fine. So you send me a dash cam. Now what do I do with this freaking thing? I don't, So we staged a flying saucer thing. I remember that. We threw a hubcap.
Yeah, right.
So I had the dash cam on the thing. We're driving down a gravel road, and with the headlights, and we threw a hubcap, and so that you can see like, oh look how good this dash cam is. You can see flying saucers and everything.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I have this little guy right here, but the whole idea of why do these things exist? Why do people make toys like this? I mean, there's something to it. I guess.
Yeah, there's something to it.
Yeah, it's a thing where, to me, the doors really opened up with the, the Pentagon pictures. It was the New York Times, I think, broke the story back in 2017, and that was a pivotal moment to me, really, when Uncle Sam says that, they're real videos, and we don't know where they're from. That's pretty cool. To me, that's amazing, and I'm surprised the world didn't come to a stop and say, wait, what? But then again, what's the next word after that? Okay, well, the mortgages still due. I still have a cold, and but it's an interesting world we're in. I hope we get an answer to this thing. And I honestly think that if it was bad news, we would have known this a long time ago. I hope.
Well, the thing is, what's bad news is like it's bad if you any news of anything like that would be bad if you have a very narrow view of existence. Yeah. But if you're open to, there's more than I can perceive, then no, there's nothing bad about it. Okay, so we're visited, we're run, we're controlled, we're the reptilians and this, that, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, to me, it wouldn't be bad news or good news. It's just, okay, that's just part of the reality. That's the reality of beyond what I perceive as reality. Yeah. Other people who have a very tight view of what's real. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You would level somebody who's got that, and it's like, oh no, actually,
have to go confess or something. Yeah.
Cooch
Well,
is saying, why haven't we found the Loch Ness Monster yet? Because the Loch Ness Monster belongs to the unified field of weirdness that I was talking about. It's the same freaking thing. It's there, and then it's not. People see it, and then they don't. They video it, and then it's gone. Right? And this has been going on for hundreds of years, man. People have been, they see it walk across the road. There's all sorts of witnesses, you know, if you read into the whole life of
outside. I saw a big UFO outside.
Yeah, you see it.
When I was running.
You saw a big triangle.
A huge triangle.
Really?
Yeah,
It's not even huge. It was like gigantic.
Really? Tell me more. Now, that's the kind of thing right there. A lot of people are talking about that.
But I don't think anybody else saw it. That's the weird thing, because I looked like the next few days to see news or anything to see if anybody else saw it. I didn't see anybody else mention it. But like I went running, so I went running and I'm on my way home and I'm running down my block towards the house and we live on the cul-de-sac. And I'm running towards the cul-de-sac and I'm finishing up my run. And when I get to the cul-de-sac, I usually walk a few circles around just to cool down. And I started to walk around to cool down and I looked behind from where I just came from. And it was a huge black triangle, like bigger than I can even explain. And it had lights around the end, and they started flashing. And then they were moving, and then they all flashed at once, and then they shut. And I was like, I'm running. I don't have my camera. And I ran in the house to get my camera, my phone, and I ran back, and it was gone.
Yeah,
it was never there.
Congratulations. You just described something a lot of people write about and talk about. Massive triangle. So
massive.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Do you feel okay? Or was it disturbing, or what did you think about that?
I was startled by the size of it, and there was no sound from it. But the lights were moving.
Yeah.
And I was just like looking at the enormous size of it.
Wow. Well, my thought is that when I say bad news, I mean, look at COVID. We're pretty delicate critters. You know what I mean? I'm saying, what if there was something about these things or this thing that was bad for our biology that it didn't mean to be bad for our biology, you know, but I'm just saying it was bad news. Or, well, we've seen the Twilight Zone episode, Two Served Man. You've seen that one, right?
It's a cookbook.
Right? So, you know, I have to say that New Elizondo, I do hear the echo, by the way. I don't know what we can do about that. There's a little bit of a delay. Yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't know.
I mean, think about it this way, right? If they want, okay, so if you go back, you talk about we talk about the ancient aliens thing, right? I mean, it appears to me that this civilization has been recreated many times over. Like, for instance, Steve, think about this for a second, okay? Let's just say you see like an abandoned drag strip, and after, let's say, 20 years, you can barely make out what was there. After 50 years, it's just a clearing in the trees, right? Okay, so what is that scene now after, let's say, 5 million years?
Right.
Or 10 million years.
I know where you're going. In other words, we're probably not the first go around for civilized life on this planet. Probably not the first go around at all.
Right. But everything we're living right now, you know, the type of society, type of civilization could have existed numerous times over the course of Earth's history. Sure. And then shelved and then recreated. And if you look at that whole ancient alien thing kind of fits into that, because they're dating some of these places that originally they're like, okay, well, yeah, it's 6,000 years old, it's 8,000 years old. Now they're saying, well, no, actually, when we look at it closer, it's closer to 400,000 years old. Or you see what I'm saying? And it's like this totally circumnavigates the perceived or the
I'm just moving it.
The academic view of our history.
The moon is also, I mean, apparently the moon may be hollow because, I mean, intentionally NASA landed or crash landed a bunch of, used up stuff into it and it rang. Apparently, something that's kind of hollow, maybe, right? And apparently there's a dark side. And apparently the way the moon orbits the Earth is just something that really doesn't make sense from a random standpoint. And it's interesting. We just don't know the answers. And to me, the idea of space, every room has a corner. Well, a room space that doesn't have a corner, it just keeps going. I can't, you know what I mean? But I have to. But what is it? Is it on the head of a pin? It's interesting. It's an interesting thing.
Well, if you look at the way the universe, the way the universe is constructed, if you look at it it appears in, and then you get into the whole sacred geometry thing, but the patterns of the universe keep appearing over and over again, right down to like the atomic level. You know, the way cells are constructed, and smaller than that. It's just smaller versions of what we perceive to be the universe. But the way I always look at stick is it's like, okay, so you got to get abstract about it for me. So, all right, we're always trying to come up with theories or ideas about when did the universe start. Okay, you got the Big Bang Theory. What's at the end of the universe? Which direction is up? Okay, because we're forced, because of our physical limitations, we're forced to look at everything from the time that we're born. Everything we encounter has a finite, like your crib has a finite border, you know, and the sun goes up and the sun goes down, and this is predictable, and this is how our brains are wired. So we can't really conceive of it has no beginning, it has no end, because everything in our life, the other thing we have for reference is it has a beginning and an end. You know, everything we look at is in terms of distance. It's a foot, it's a mile, an inch, it's a thousandth of an inch, it's a yard, it's whatever it happens to be. You can't really, we have to assign these things. And so now you try to apply that to something like the universe, and I don't think it works.
Right. It's our frame of reference. It's how we make sense of things. Well, there might be a whole different, the other side of the record. There might be 1,000 sides to the record. We only see one. I don't know. But all of it, my little peanut doesn't really, I try, I keep an open mind, but I do like the idea that the moon is made of cheese, because that's how this wrote in. And I got to say, the 62 Dodge Dart that he showed, I have a 62 Dart coming here within the next 2 days or so from.
And I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, and me too. I got to say, it left Texas last Tuesday, I think it was. Well, this Tuesday, and they said it'll be here by Friday. But it's one of those things. It's a New York-based trucking company, and they say the vehicle's in New York State now. So the next couple of days it'll ride my driveway. But I'm kind of excited about it. I haven't seen underneath it or in the trunk. It might be full of holes, but the quarters and the floors look good. My plan is to build a 513 Max Wedge and make a real nasty 4-door Max Wedge. Not a what if, because they built a few of them. But it's just sort of a Max Wedge monster with no paint, nothing, just as it was. But it's a police car too. It's got the
I would love to have a hand in that somehow or another.
All right, to be continued. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to make a YouTube series on that, you know, and go along. The 62 Dart. When I was a kid, they scared me. I hated them because I thought they were some of the ugliest cars on the planet. But they're also cool. I'll show you something real quick here. Yeah, I built this model right here in probably 1979, something like that. This is the Ram Charge. And I remember I made my own exhaust system and stuff like that. But at this point in time, I didn't realize, that this engine is incorrect. Now, here's the thing.
It's a long ram.
Yeah, Motor Trend actually campaigns, or the Ram Chargers actually campaigned one of these things early on before the Max Wedge was done or ready. And for a few seconds, there was a long ram in a 62 B body that the Rams made. So those pictures sent me down the wrong path back in '82 before I knew any better. But here's this, I built this years. But that front end, I mean, my God, how crazy is that? What a weird looking car. You know,
they're beautiful. Two things. When you put the long rims on a B body, I know this.
You got to cut the fender.
You can't have shock absorbers.
Yeah.
Because the carburetor actually takes the place of the top of the shock.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to open up the wheel well and no shocks.
Yeah.
Then the second thing is the weirdest thing. Okay, so you know the story about those cars. Those were Virgil Exner's post heart attack.
Right. Shrinkers.
Yeah. So what happened was they heard that Chevrolet was downsizing all of their cars.
Right.
So Virgil Exner had drawn up this asymmetrical full-size car. And at the very last minute, they were like, wait, Chevy is downsizing all their cars. We have to downsize ours. And so they took the A body and they stretched it out in every dimension and they shrunk Virgil's C body dimensions down to the B body size. And that's why those cars are as weird as they are. And then on top of that, I don't know if you've ever how well do you know those cars, Steve?
Fairly well.
Visually, the sides of them are like saggy breasts.
Yeah.
If you sight down, it's right. So you can't. I don't know if you can see it on the model, right? Exactly. You got it. You got it. You got it. Nobody else has ever seen that. Only you would see that. I knew it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's and there was a car called the Super Sport that there were illustrations of. Plymouth was going to use the term Super Sport on their performance version of that thing. I think it was Collectible Automobile. Jeffrey Godshall, who's an illustrator designer for Chrysler back then, he's deceased now, but he did a tell-all in Collectible Automobiles magazine maybe 5 years ago, describing, yes, the last-minute crash course to sink the cars on the false information that the Chevy line was going to get smaller for 62. But of course, it brought us the B body and the smallest of the three mid-size cars and a max wedge killer. The little lightweight B body. So great car. So I'm excited to get this thing, first gen. And plus, it's a cop car with 11-inch drums, and it should be interesting. I'll to be continued. I'll keep you posted on how it all looks, but I'll do a series of videos. One thing we just recently did, by the way, remember about 1973, Uniroyal Tire Company.
I saw that.
Uniroyal. One thing we did after we stopped rolling was I said, you know what? Let's find out if this thing is a limited slip. Put a floor jack. And damn thing was a 3-speed manual 6-cylinder car. Had a posi in the back, and it was factory. And it was designed and built to be used in a stunt show kind of thing.
Right.
And a posi. And we did that after. So I might go back out there and do a thing. And let's look at the rear axle. What ratio? Is it a 391? Because it was born for sprinting around fairgrounds and going up on two wheels, while Uni, Roy, and Al had the identical Ventura 2s and messed around. So, yeah, but that was an interesting thing, that Uniroyal Ventura.
So Studio 70 says the silent black triangle, like Kathy saw, is real. I have experienced one as well.
Yeah.
Anybody else out there?
Yeah, I know the word with those things, that there's usually a light on each end. At the North Sea in Europe, apparently, the oil rigs out there in the mid-'80s, that was a site of a lot of that kind of stuff, apparently. The North Sea sightings, whatever, way up in the sky. And here's the thing. Sometimes they were seen with jet planes escorting them. So you start to wonder, is it maybe we have some massive dirigible type thing? But again, these things are silenced. Now, that could say dirigible, Hindenburg or something like that. But they're also not puffed and they're not blowing around with the breeze. They're sitting still. So that would indicate they have a fan or some ability to stay put. But it might be massive lifting bodies, might be a massive dirigible. But why would they test these things over population? Why and how?
Now, you were talking before about people taking pictures of them, right? And something. I remember there's a guy in. I can't see. I'm not really in. I'm not a UFO guy really. But there's a guy. His name is Billy Meyer. I know his name is Billy Meyer because it's a funny car racer, Billy Meyer.
Right.
Who bought the IHRA, eliminated the class that I had to record in. But that's besides the point. But this guy is in Ireland or Scotland or someplace, one of those countries, okay, one of those areas. And he has this ability to know when these things are going to appear. And he actually goes out and takes pictures of them.
Okay.
So, and I've seen this in a couple of different places. And again, don't quote me on the mechanics of all of this, but he has some sort of intuition that tells him, yeah, go here now, and he goes and he actually gets pictures of these things. Mm-hmm. And people have looked at the pictures, and they're not photoshopped, they're not, you know what I mean? He's got videos of them, he's got all sorts of stuff. The guy's name is Billy Meyer. If any of you guys are interested in that sort of thing, look that up.
I just hope he continues doing what he's doing. Now, this fellow here talked about the pulse engine. Well, go ahead, Tony. Read that.
What, the pulse engine?
Well, D. Scaglione apparently is saying that he saw, I think he might, the scramjet. Apparently, there's something, it creates pulses behind it. Yeah. And when I was in California, when I moved out to Los Angeles from Massachusetts back in 1991, I went to work for Chrysler Power Magazine. And on Mondays, there was like every morning a little shutter to the building. And I thought, what the hell is that? An aftershock? And Roland would say, no, that's the scramjet. I'm like, what are you talking about? Supposedly there was a thing that was flying up the coast from LA to San Francisco in seconds, going boom, boom, boom. It would set off, it would create seismic events because of its rattling. And it was the weirdest damn thing. But every Monday there'd be a little rattle. The doors would, and it was this thing zipping up the coast. So he said, I don't know. That's the scramjet thing.
Well, that was okay. So the people we were talking the last live we did last Wednesday night. People were talking about nitromethane and the Germans and hydrazine and all these other things. And a lot of people, the Germans used a combination of nitromethane and hydrazine to power their V2 rockets, which were known as buzz bombs.
Yeah.
And that's the Blitz in England. That's what they were doing. They were sending these things over, and those were pulse jets.
Thousands of those things, bump. They had to get up to 210 miles an hour, I think, with a slingshot, and then once in the air, they'd start to become efficient. The shutters would open and close, and
they had like a reed valve.
Yes.
But that was called the buzz bomb.
Yeah. Huh. So D. Scaglione, so it left a pulse trail. That's interesting. I mean, next time
it's never seemed more man-made than classic UFO. That's just that's an unidentified flying object in that you can't identify what it is, but not necessarily anything, let's say, otherworldly, where there wouldn't be any sound or there wouldn't be any like means of propulsion. How about abductions, man?
I don't know. I see that kind of stuff, and Betty and Barney Hill. When I was a kid, like there was an ABC weekly movie on. I thought it was interesting and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of that whole thing, and implants and babies and stuff like that. I don't know. Yeah, it's too much human element in it that may or may not be real. It's too hard. But the only thing I know for sure that I kind of put some faith in is the recent Pentagon stuff. The Navy stuff. Because that seems to be very, very real. And there's a couple of people who are sort of spearheading that. Lou Elizondo, anything he says, I pretty much listen to. David Fravor, who's, of course, a former fighter pilot, who was there. And there's another fellow, I forget his name, Jeremy something, but he's good. Any of those three guys, I'm kind of like, I'll listen to that stuff. So it's interesting. It's a new era, according to these guys, and the Pentagon, for that matter. Can we trust our government? Of course we can.
Oh yeah, right away.
I mean, I guess I do because what else? What else are you gonna do?
In Brandon, we trust.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. That's as far as I'm going. Bruce W., have you ever heard of the New Zealand Kaikoura Lights UFO sighting in December 1978? I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
but there is something. There's a mountain in North Carolina. They have what they call ghost lights.
Okay.
Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I've heard things like that. Yeah, maybe it's like seismic activity creating static electricity, which then discharges a lightning bolt. Could be, or maybe it's Martians. I don't know. I know for sure. There's a lot of interesting stuff in that realm. Well, supposedly in South Africa, there was a UFO landed in a schoolyard in 1986 or something like that. A bunch of kids walked up. It was New Zealand. I think it was South Africa. It was a bunch of kids went up to this thing, and they were later interviewed. And they're still alive to this day. They're in their 30s or early 40s now, and they all tell the same story. And they communicated apparently with something that landed real close by. And it's interesting, these things where people describe this, and they were peaceful, they were fine, but I just don't know what to make of that kind of stuff. I don't crap on it. I don't say no, can't be. I say, well, it could. I don't know. I want to know more, but at the same time, it's always a dead end. You got to fly to these people, sit down with them, buy them a beer, and that's something most people can't do. But it should be done, and it is being done. I know these people have been interviewed a lot, but I don't know. It's weird.
Josh Hayes, Brown Mountain Lights. That's the one I was. How about reincarnation, Steve? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. It's kind of funny. There are times when every one of us probably has just real distinct memories that are just one click away from our own personal reality. Like driving I'm loading coal into a steam engine or something like that. But that's usually a dream. And our brains, we get so much input every day that it probably becomes a soup. And it's documented. When you sleep, something similar to LSD is released in your mind. You not hallucinate, but when you do acid or LSD, not that I know about these things, but when I was a kid I did. But anyway, but that was something that tapped into naturally occurring chemicals in your body that create imagination and illusions and stuff. So reincarnation may be a function of that. But people coming back from the dead, I'd like to think it's possible, but I don't know. But the jury's out.
I tell you a story about this. My grandmother, on my mother's side, she had like 9 brothers, and they all died in one way or another. Okay, so this was in the 1850s. I was born in '62, so this is like late 1950s, late 1950s, and she had 2 brothers. I don't remember the name of the first one. He worked for the railroad. He actually got run over by a train. This was in a rail yard. He was a mechanic of some sort in a rail yard, got run over by a train. Died.
Was it over and out, or was he injured or killed?
That story never, that part of it I never. And then the other one, this is interesting because this ties into stuff. The other one was, and my grandmother swore that I was a reincarnation of her brother Dominic. Now, Dominic got killed in a house fire. Dominic was a mechanic, ran a shop out of his house. It was cold, but it was winter, so he was cleaning a carburetor, right? And so he had a bucket of the carburetor dip, I imagine.
Right.
Brought it into the house, and the pilot light or whatever it was lit, which I actually had that happen, something very similar to happening with nitromethane. But pilot light lit and burned the house down. He died in the fire. So she swore I was a reincarnation of Dominic. Now, her one brother that got killed by the trains, when I was a kid, I was 2, 3, 4 years old, I had a very intricate working knowledge of steam locomotives. Like I could identify them by builder, I could identify them by wheel arrangement, by all of these different. So when you see a picture of one, I knew exactly what it was, and so I had an odd familiarity with steam locomotives. Huh. And then the other thing is the mechanic part of it. That's So.
Right. Are you aware? Do you have a sense that you're reincarnated, or do you have memories of other stuff, or are you just a passive recipient, do you think? Or
it's a familiarity when I'm around certain things. Like I was up in, we went up to Carlisle this last summer. I was hanging out with John Wilburn, and we went by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania. I shot a video over there on steam locomotives. And there's only 2 places on Earth where I feel completely at home, where it's just like, okay, this is my zone. This is where I'm at. And the one of them is when I'm around a steam locomotive, where it's just like, okay, I'm familiar with this. This is my home, right? And when I'm around a nitro car, if I'm around a running nitro car, I'm completely relaxed. I'm completely at home. It's an odd thing. It's I can't really explain it to you. But yeah, there's so memories, no. But familiarity and yeah, absolutely. Where I know I didn't have this experience in my normal life. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it had to come from someplace. Where did it come from?
Huh. Yeah. It's funny. There's not a ghost thing, but when we were doing Roadkill's Junkyard Gold, we did 31 episodes, and for most of them, I would fly into a junkyard 2 to 3 days before anybody else got there. So I'd be alone in the yard. Sometimes I was in a yard in Idaho till 10 o'clock at night, and the sun was still bright. And there was a weirdness in some cases to junkyards. I found them to be intensely depressing. And I had to tell myself not to feel that way. And it was more than just these cars being wasted. I don't know what that was, but I'm okay with it now. But there was a time when I just felt like not the cars had spirits, but there was something about it that was particularly depressing. And I
agree. I have felt exactly the same thing. And it's not that the car, it's not the decay. You say, well, you feel that way because everything around you is destroyed and rotted and everything else. No, it's not that at all. There's like a heaviness to it. Because it's like you're surrounded by, at what point was like somebody's pride and joy. Yeah. You know, they scrimped, they saved, they struggled, they did everything. They bought this car. They loved this car. And now this car is just this thing. And it's like you pick up on that energy imprint that was left behind by the owner. It's a heaviness. I've been there and I've experienced exactly that.
And I also say that, the thing, I love cars, everything, but except one thing, they don't talk. Well, sometimes it's good. Here's why. In 1987, a buddy of mine, Mike Ditto, he's not with us anymore, but I bought from him a 68 Dodge Dart GTS 340 convertible, column shifted automatic car, kind of a weird car. Had Yeah, it was a little rusty. It was a New England bomb, quarter panels all loaded with bottom, but the floors in the trunk were nice. Had the original 340. The torque plate had been replaced because somebody tried to put a floor shifter in it. They drilled through the floor into the case of the torque plate with their drill to mount their B&M star shifter in the floor of the thing. So they put a hole in the case, so it lost its original torque plate. But anyway, there was the front fenders were a little bent up, but there was a dent in the hood. Turns out that was the elbow from a lady that was hit while pushing her shopping cart.
Oh, man.
I didn't hear if she was killed or not, but the lady's elbow left a dent in the hood of the GTS double hub hood. And there's a bump in the middle, a dent from an elbow. And I didn't realize this. Well, I didn't know this until somebody told me the second or third owner, oh, that car, by the way, yeah, that car hit somebody, maybe killed them. They didn't say it. So I'd sold the car by then, but wow, okay, that's what that bump in the hood was about. Not that I would have thought differently about the car, but sometimes it's best not to know. I bought a car in California one time. It was a 75 Dodge Dart. These are the days when if you had $800, you could buy all kinds of stuff in the recycler. You still can, but now they're Honda Civics and stuff like that, which is cool. But you get a Dodge Dart, and this thing, the back seat had this dried blood stain, massive. Like dried blood is almost hard. It's like dried super glue, but it was red. And I thought something either died or got born on that back seat, and I never cleaned it. I just let it be. Right? It was a car. I treated it like a two-door, but I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to know what happened back there. But it was from downtown LA. You know what I mean? It was like that people lived in it and stuff. So I don't know.
I had an 8 when I was 20. I had a 69 Charger that I had bought a few years before. It was a stolen recovery. It was stripped, and I built this whole thing in the street really literally in the street under the street light, right?
Yeah.
And this car was just every bit of this car I had my imprint on. Okay,
Yeah.
had a full 46 pack in it.
Wow.
So, and this is how I met Kathy, actually. She was, her old man had a gas station, and she was pumping gas at the gas station. So I would come in there occasionally with the Charger, gas it up.
Yeah.
And she sent her mom out one day to ask me if I wanted to sell the car. And I was like, no, it's not for sale. This is, it's my car. So she said, well, my daughter wants to buy it, right? So I says, let me see your daughter, right?
Yeah, so, cool. Gal wants to buy a Charger, yeah.
Out comes Kathy, blonde hair, blue eyes, which is a rare thing in New York. Freckles, I got a freckle fetish. Sold, done, right? So that's how we met, through that car. But that car rejected her like, am I making this up now?
No, it's pennies. Yeah.
That car would run flawless. It was everything you could ever ask a car to be until I went to pick her up. And then she would get in the car, it would start, it would die, it would guzzle gas like there was no time. There was every time she would get anywhere near that car, there was like failure involved. Wow. It was uncanny. It wasn't just a coincidence. I could drive that car for 2-3 days, never have an issue with it. It's all perfect. She gets in the car, it won't start. The battery is dead. It's flooded. It's knocking. It's just like you name it.
The oil can open.
Yeah. Yeah, you name it, and it was just, there was definitely a relationship there.
Yeah.
Your story with the Dart, this is around that same era. I was about 20 years old, had a gas station, and I bought a 70 Imperial, white 70 Imperial. This thing was perfect, it was pristine. It was 10 years old at the time, right?
Burgundy interior, probably burgundy gut. What color was the gut?
It was white, it was a black gut.
Oh, black, okay, pretty cool.
Or dark gray, might have been dark gray. Doesn't matter, but it was pristine, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And I got this thing for $20.
Wow.
Bought the car for $20. It had no reverse. Okay? So I'm too busy making a living doing customers' cars and stuff like that. I don't have the time to work with this car. I'm just going to drive it and park it in places where I don't have to, right? So I had the car for a couple of weeks. Back then, I used to flip a car every week, 2 cars a week. It was crazy. It was just crazy. So, but I like this car, and I'm driving it, the air conditioning work. So one day, I'm on Castleton Avenue. I was on Port Richmond Avenue, and I pulled into a parking space and couldn't back out. Couldn't pull forward. So I go out in front of the car, and I'm pushing it backwards. And as I'm pushing it backwards, a woman walks up and she says, "Oh my God, that's my husband's car. Where did you buy that?" I said, "Well, I bought it from so and so." That went, "Oh yeah, that was his friend. He took the car when he was done." I said, "Oh geez, I'm sorry about your husband." I said, "How did he go?" She says, "He died pushing the car backwards. He had a heart attack."
Because they had no reverse, so it killed this guy.
You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
That's the start. Thank you, Dustin. You two make a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. Where or when can we buy Steve Meggs shirt? Where Steve Meggs merchandise? We need this. The world needs Steve Meggs merchandise.
Well, it's funny. Actually, I met Donovan here. His mom, Sharon, runs a local graphics store, and I had her make some sort of test t-shirts for me, which right now I'm sort of finalizing the design. So I guess pretty soon, but I'll put Instagram stuff out there on, Steve Mac shirts. One of the first things I might do is a series of Bad Seed Chevette t-shirts, the caddy powered Chevette. So soon, but right now I don't have enough made or finalized the designs. But with that said, thank you for asking. And at some point I probably will do that, got to help to pay for my dart restoration. So thank you for asking, but right now, nothing cooking, but stay tuned to stevemax.com and stuff, they'll be out there. So
What do we got, Kat?
Let's see.
Black t-shirt.
yeah.
Have you heard about the Travis
Oh,
Walton?
we use one, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Travis Walton, if I'm not mistaken, Bruce, Travis Walton was a guy who was out fishing with his buddies, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they were on. It was this guy Travis.
Yeah. Fire in the Sky.
You've heard about this?
Yeah, Fire in the Sky. The movie was about him. Yes.
Oh, wasn't he missing for like 2 days?
Yeah, he was missing. Yeah, I know about the story and stuff. It's interesting. You got to wonder. It's one of those things where, the Pentagon videos, I can bite into that. Anything else, I don't know, man. I don't say no, but the Pentagon videos, to me, I want to see that strain of information grow, and I think it will. But the rest, I don't know. Yeah, Travis Walton. I know 3 guys are out hunting, and suddenly a light beam up he goes, and everybody has the same memories. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's compelling, but I don't know. I don't think I'd want to have that experience. Almost everybody who goes through that, they're kind of messed up, because you got to wonder, what do you do after that? What's normal after that? You know what I mean? You wake up every night thinking about that. I mean, I don't know, man. It'd be kind of weird.
Have you ever had any missing time?
I haven't, but I've had some weird things occur. I'll put it like this, okay? I used to smoke a little pot, right? I don't anymore, right? But I had a couple of joints sitting there one time. My mom and dad are both gone, but they were sitting there and then they were gone. 2 days later, they reappeared and nobody's in this house. So I tell myself, Dad took them away, Mom put them back. You know what I mean? And they're both dead. You know what I'm saying? So, but that was friggin' weird to have these 2 joints go missing. This is a long time ago. But it's like,
okay, see, I have that kind of stuff happen to me constantly. It's not even, it doesn't happen here at the house. It'll always happen where I'm working. Okay. Yeah. I have that happen to me constantly, where it's not even an unusual occurrence, where I'll go to where I last used a tool or a part or whatever it happens to be, and it's not there. It's in a completely different location where it's a nonsensical location where I wouldn't have put it. And when I say this happens constantly, I mean once a week, where it's not even unusual anymore, where it's like, and you say, well, maybe I wasn't thinking and I walked over there with that. No, there's something that plays around and it's playful.
Poltergeist, right? Poltergeist,
there's something that plays around and moves things around on me to the most ridiculous, nonsensical places where they would never be there. You know what I'm saying?
I do get a thing now. I'm 57. So I'm not a kid anymore. I don't feel 57. But there are times when I'm saying, okay, Steve, where I go into the garage, come back. Okay, where'd you put that thing? And I always say it's right where you put it down. It's right in front of you. And half the time I look around, and I come back, and there it is. And it's almost always because my eyes were darting. I wasn't really thinking. And I looked right at it, kept going. So I try to slow it all down. But that happens a fair amount too. But I don't think it goes into hyperspace. It's just that I'm not focused fully. And there it is, right where I was looking. I always say it's right where you last put it. That thing, screwdriver, wheel, model car, matchbox, whatever it might be. But, I don't think it's supernatural. But with that said, I don't know. But you get a little older and the clutches are slipping. I don't know.
The last time it happened to me, it was a couple of weeks ago. Andy Wood, Unity Motorsports Garage, had sent me a care package to do some carburetor modifications, and he sent me a bag that had a bunch of small jets in it, and an Allen key and a tap and a drill bit, right? So just to make life easy for me, so I could zap it right in there. And he sent me a big bag with boosters and a tool and everything, and he sent me a smaller bag within the big bag that had those pieces. And I had those on one of the workbenches where I filmed that video. Well, when I was getting ready to film the video, before Kathy showed up to film it, I was getting everything ready, putting everything where it had to be, and I couldn't find the bag that had the little jets in it. I looked everywhere. Did it drop? Did it fall? Because I had it right there. Looked everywhere. I give up. I'm like, all right, I'll just do a different video and this thing will turn up. Well, as I'm walking past down the hallway, I have a Miata. I put the Slate 6 in. The bag was sitting on the trunk of the Miata.
Now, had you been in there that day?
I had been nowhere near there.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, sometimes things like that just go into the file of, oh well. I mean, you can't fixate on that stuff, but
I'm not fixating. I mean, it's I just take it for granted that kind of thing happens to me on a regular basis.
As long as the wheel of the car doesn't go missing while you're going down the highway and then come back, you know what I mean? But it is, I don't know. Yeah.
Me calls that bench blindness. Yeah, I've had that too. I've had normal bench blindness. I know exactly what you're talking about because you put an engine, you put together an engine. It's like, where's the rear seal? Where's the rear seal? It's in my hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, we call them that.
Yeah, it's always you're looking too quick, slow it down, and there it is. It's kind of weird how you can see but not see. Okay, you can see it and hear. That's good. That's good. I do hear a bit of an echo, but who knows?
That might be feedback because I have you on a speaker here.
Okay. Do you hear it now?
What's that?
Do you hear it now?
No, you sound fine to me, but the people on the TV, or maybe with a different level of sound equipment here, might be picking up the reverb from you on my speaker because neither of us were in headphones.
Loop, a circle. Yeah.
Right. That's probably what it is. But Kathy did turn the volume down, so that probably helped.
Okay. Yeah.
What do we got here? A ghost just walked behind UT. No,
It's me.
That's her. She's real.
I'm trying to move the mic.
We had a haunted litter box.
Oh, please.
You remember this?
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, I couldn't tell these stories unless I had witnesses, okay? I
Yeah.
had a haunted litter box. This is at the same time we had the Emmy thing going on.
Yeah.
No, it's different. We
It was the
moved
same
to
period
a
of
new
time.
house.
Lots
Yeah.
of litter box.
Well,
Yeah, we were on King.
so there's noise. She's going to sleep and watching TV, and she's coming here and she has a litter box next to the bed, right? She says, "What's that noise?" And I'm sitting and I'm listening to her, and we're hearing scraping sounds, right?
It's like you pick it up and you drop it.
Okay, yeah.
Like you do, as if somebody picked up litter and then slowly dropped it back into the box.
Like siphoning it.
Yep.
We couldn't find it, couldn't find the noise, but it was there, it was distinct. We looked around for probably a good 20 minutes or so, and then realized the sound was coming from the litter box. And then when we went to the litter box, it stopped.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Do you have mice in your house? I do. Could there be mice running around? Look for little black poo-poos. That's mice can mess around.
No, it definitely wasn't mice. It was coming from the litter box. There were no marks in the litter box. There was no poop in the litter box. There was nothing there. It was just a clean, fresh litter box, and it was making noise.
Jeez.
And then when we went to it, just like when the Henny block was rocking back and forth, when we get up to look to see where the noise was coming from, it would stop. And if you sat back down and relaxed, it would start again. So it was like reading our minds, right? Am I making this up?
No.
Am I being inaccurate at all?
No.
Yeah.
I had a small horror movie moment in my house a couple nights ago. I have a cat that, in fact, on one of the episodes of Steve Magnante's Supermodels on Motor Trend, the cat's in the background sitting there. We actually did a little piece on it. So the cat's nice, but it sleeps right by my head sometimes. Well, the other night, I hear it go, meow, and I what? I turned the light on, and the cat had killed a baby mouse and put it down next to my head on the bed. And it was still warm. I'm like, oh, so, the cat says, okay, here, master, here's something for you. I was like, oh, come on. But the cat made this really weird meow. So I turned the light on, come on. So I'm like, hopefully it's really, really dead. So I picked it up with a paper towel, took it to the bathroom, put it in the toilet, flushed it. But, come on, at least it wasn't a horse's head, right? So that could have been worse. But the cat killed a mouse, put it next to my head. I'm glad I found it because you roll over, put your cheek on the thing. Anyway, I live in an old house, 1890. There's mice and stuff everywhere, but you don't leave a bag of M&Ms out at night because in the morning it'll be like, wow, that's a weird taste. You look inside, there's mouse poop on the M&Ms, and yes, they pee when they eat M&Ms. They probably get a sugar buzz like mad, but mice. I know all about them.
John Zool, the Easter Island Head's always fascinated me. There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yes, yeah, pyramids. I know there are a lot of like submerged areas where, there's no doubt the earth went through a series of massive earthquakes and stuff like that, and continents shifted. And they say there were some areas where there were, half of a a castle 1,000 miles from the other half of the castle, all of this underwater, but just weird things, from the times before we were here, I just,
I mean, there are cases, there's that battery that they found,
it shouldn't be. Yeah.
then there's the intra, I can't remember the name of it. It's a device that they found. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. It's a little computer thing, a timepiece or something, and a shipwreck. Yeah.
Right. And then there was this other thing where they were drilling for something. It was like 200 feet down, whatever the distance was, and they were hitting something metallic. They brought it up and it was ball bearings. It was a device that had ball bearings in it.
Wow.
And there's photographs of these things.
Gears as well.
Yeah, that's the intra something or other device is what you're talking about with the gears.
Yeah.
They found the battery in the pyramid, in one of the pyramids. There's all sorts of freaking things like that, man.
Yeah, we don't have all the answers, that's for sure. The thing that's a little frustrating is, a lot of folks will say sometimes, that science has to have a pat answer to things, you know what I mean? And maybe science can be a little more open-minded to things we just don't know about, you know what I mean? But it is true, we don't have all the answers by any stretch.
Well, you see, that's the thing about science and the scientific method. And I mean, as a mechanic, obviously, you too, we work with a mechanical science. Obviously, these things are related. You know what I mean? But still, you talk about, quote, science. Science is limited to the same limit. Science is limited to the same limitations that we are in terms of time, space, and dimension.
Yeah, laws of physics.
So, science has to use one of those dimensions, one of those boundaries to. You see what I'm saying? So there's like a flawed aspect to science in that it's unable to quantify the unknown.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Yeah, we're doing the best we can. Put it like that, But yeah.
Yeah, Chuck U. Farley, have you seen the core drills in Egypt? They found these perfect holes bored in stone, and they can't work out how they did it because they wouldn't have had the metallurgy to make steel drills. Well, it's just like those and they're all over the world where they build these walls and buildings and whatnot. And it's giant. Forget about Stonehenge, man. They build these walls. Stonehenge is pretty easy to explain. If you really wanted to, because you could build a dirt mound, bring stuff up, and then clear away the dirt. I get that. That's fine. So Stonehenge isn't really that crazy. But when you get these giant walls that are built out of rocks the size of this freaking house, and they fit together absolutely perfectly.
You can't put a credit card between them, and they're
exactly. How the hell did you do that? What was it work there?
I say to myself, there's got to be. NASA or the CIA or somebody could go and just look for, microscopic metallic bits or something. You got to assume somebody's done that. But then again, maybe there really is no way to see. But they say there are mill marks on some of these stones, that something was spinning and turning and cutting away the stone. So that's like, holy smokes. But, I don't know. It's kind of funny. A lot of the times the shows you see about this stuff, they're kind of one-sided, and you can tell they don't really want to push too hard because the answer might be pretty obvious. So some of the shows about this kind of stuff, I just take with 2 grains of sand. You know what I mean? But I guess I want to go myself with a crew and find out if there's any metallurgy or anything like that on these things. But I know what you're talking about. A lot of questions. We don't have all the answers by any stretch.
Well, Iceman 2K10 says new evidence points to the pyramids being built out of concrete blocks cast in place. Well, I wouldn't say no. I would want to know how they would get the forms out.
Yeah, right. And what is concrete? Concrete's generally made of, but I think these are purported to be actual stone, and stone's made a different way. Then you have a geologist to find out what is a stone and what's concrete. One's water-based, it dries, leaves behind a solid thing. So I don't know. I'd have to learn more about what definitions we're talking about here. What is concrete and what is cast?
Well, I would say that if they're cast in place, it's entirely possible, but if it's cast in place and it's finite, that means that there has to be a form that it was poured into.
Yeah.
So what happens to the form between the blocks? Yeah. There would be evidence of wood or whatever device they used to separate and make that separate casting. There would be evidence of that. So I'm not saying no, but I think it's kind of unlikely.
Yeah, there's another thing, by the way, here in New England, you're a railroad guy. There's a thing called the Central New England Railroad, which in 1911 through 14 was something like 70 miles of rail bed that was laid between, I think, Providence, Rhode Island, and Worcester, or something like that. But anyway, throughout New England, in Berry and New Braintree, Massachusetts, New Braintree and West Warren, in the middle of the woods, you'll find this massive fill that's wicked high, has a concrete face to it. That was once going to take a thing called the Horseshoe Bridge over the Quabog River and stuff like that. Well, World War I comes along, and they stop production on this thing, but it's like a series of dots throughout New England forests. And in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, there's some spots where you can see where they created the railbed, never ran a train over it, but they paid for this with largely British investors. It was not a scam, but kind of a scam. It was called the Central New England Railroad. But anyway, in the middle of the woods, you find these massive concrete pylons with the wood, the pattern of the wood form that was used to mold it in 1914. You can still see the wood pattern on that hunk of wood that was concrete, So and the concrete it's like really granular stuff, but that's not a mystery. That's the Central New England Railway, and also known as the Titanic Railway, because one of the funders died on the Titanic. The gold did not.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was kind of at the very dying days of railroading, when trucks were beginning to take big bites out of it. Of course, World War I comes along in 1914. The British funding dried up. That was the end of it. So we're left with these really unsightly pylons and abutments all throughout New England, like 70 miles of them. It's kind of fun. You go into the woods in Brimfield, Mass, and there's this massive thing. It's like, what is this doing in the woods? Well, if you know the story, it's just an abutment man-made back in the day. It's like 100 feet high. It's this weird damn thing. But you can still see not plywood, but the wooden forms around them. So,
Mr. Will sent the super chat. Thank you, Mr. Will. Hey, Tony and Steve, did you ever hear about Stanley Meyer that made a carbon on water fuel cell and was poisoned?
No. Was he poisoned by the stuff or by a conspiracy? What are we talking here? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of familiar with it, and yeah, supposedly it was killed through a conspiracy. Big oil is going to kill everybody who tries to compete with them. Here's the thing, okay, Mr. Will. If something like that was possible, there are so many great minds. I mean, people who just make us look like babbling idiots.
Elon Musk.
What's that?
Elon Musk.
There are so many super minds out there that have a love for cars and machinery and engines and so on and so forth, as well as an entrepreneurial spirit. If any of that was even remotely possible, it would be a standard thing. There would be a club, a group, an organization, a hobby that revolved around making stuff run on water, making internal combustion engines run on water. It would be a common thing. So, no, I mean, I see when I see stuff like that, I just kind of dismiss it out of hand.
Yeah, it's usually it's just a little piece of the story. The rest of it makes it pretty boring and uninspiring. But sometimes, people sell magazines. The National Enquirer, made millions, made decades of history and a living by telling half the story and creating the other half. And
isn't it funny how the National Enquirer has actually become a credible news source?
Is it really?
Yeah.
I don't even know this. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Huh.
Well, I mean, compared to the network news,
well, that's true too. Yeah. Everybody has an agenda.
Now, along those lines, I did see something recently about a guy who is able to release hydrogen from water in some process, and he plumbs it into small engines. He uses like a lawnmower engine. Huh. And and whatever process he uses, some sort of electrolysis or whatever it is, and he's able to release hydrogen from the water. The hydrogen gas is plumbed into the induction, and I've seen videos of running lawnmowers and stuff like that off of this. I imagine that would be a fairly commonly known technology among people who deal with alternative fuels, and I don't think there's enough BTU, I don't think there's enough energy release in that amount of hydrogen to make it worthwhile, to make enough power to actually move it, because getting an engine to rotate under its own power is a completely different thing than getting it to actually run under its own power.
Yeah. Lab experiments versus practical machinery. There's a big difference.
Right.
And I think, ran on hydrogen separated, cost too much to produce. Remember the Fish carburetor, this supposed carburetor of the 1930s, 40s? This guy, Fish, it was this carburetor that made
I remember that.
Your gas tank would overfill. It would start making gas. bullshit. But you know what I mean. But just these things quite often are half baked, just stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes.
It's like the under carburetor screens and the tornado thing, and it's like,
Wizards.
come on. You know what I mean? It's like, if there was any value to that, right? Somebody would have, the 1911 Peugeot Formula One team would have found that and would have used it, and it would be a normal thing in our, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like it's only people who really live in a kind of bubble where it's like they don't understand the depth of the science and mental energy that's been expended on the internal combustion device. It's only people who can't really fathom the depth of that would believe a story along
those things are targeted at less than fully informed customers. Suckers, in other words, the split fire spark plugs, they had a big thing. The reality is, a spark will find the closest area between two hunks of metal. So if there's two tips or one, the split fire thing was, it's interesting, but it doesn't make double the spark, period. That's about the ignition system. So not to poop on split fire, but for years and years, they made big money. And in fact, a lot of, multi-electrodes and stuff, it's always the shortest one that's going to make the gap. They all will make a gap, but the shortest one is the one that's going to make the only one.
If you look at the earliest production spark plugs, that's what they are. Instead of having a single ground strap, they have folded over, they have the electrode in the center, and then they have folded over metal, and the spark just dances around to whichever piece of metal happens to be the cleanest at that particular moment.
Happens to be the cleanest. Indeed. Right on. Yeah.
Right. And that goes back to the 1900s. The 1890s. That was the original. What they're doing with those the E3 spark plugs was actually the original design for spark plugs.
But so it's funny, more is better, right? Not always, but if you believe that, go ahead and pay $20 for that spark plug. You know what I mean?
I see Mopar Man over. Click on Mopar Man there. The electric car concept was nothing new. Early 1900s, the electric motor-powered buggy was invented. Edison made batteries for it. Full charge, 100 miles per hour. Okay, even further back than that, Steve. I got to see. We're both Mopar guys, right? Mopar trivia, right? Mopar trivia. What if you follow the Chrysler product back to its original, the very first vehicle that you can now genealogically trace to the Mopar as we know it? Do you know what it is?
I know Walter P. Chrysler disassembled a locomobile way back when. Locomobile, that was
long before that.
I don't know. Yeah.
1894, New York City. It was a car called the Electrobat.
Okay, I've heard the name. Yeah.
The Electrobat was a battery-powered car.
Yeah.
Electric car.
Rotary truck kind of thing. Yeah.
That they designed for commercial use.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Electrobat company went tits up. It was absorbed by another company, which was absorbed by another company, which was absorbed by Maxwell, which then later on, and so the original, every Chrysler product, every Mopar out there today and that has ever existed owes its existence to an electric car called the Electrobat in 1894.
I know, of course, the big three in the early teens wasn't Ford, GM, and Chrysler. It was gas, steam, and electricity. Those three things were equally popular as engines for vehicles until about 1920. Gas, steam, electricity, all three of them. And ladies liked electric vehicles because they were clean. There was no fire. Plug it in and go. And now we're returning to it. But it's true. Yes, electric vehicles have been around for a long time, very long time. We still
thank you for the super chat, Alan. Need UTG to Steve's experience. Please answer the two. We really want to do car stuff, but that's okay. Please answer the 2 versus 4-bolt main question. Some say 4-bolt main is the way to go, but I've never heard of mains pulling away. Go ahead, Steve. I have the.
Yeah. Well, what I'd say on that one is, 4-bolt mains, the reason why they're often used is for endurance racing, where over a long period of time, the progressive effect of cap walk.
There you go.
Yeah, it's not about max performance, but it's endurance, and that's what 4-bolt mains keep that clamp going. Whereas in a drag race situation, doesn't run long enough to have the cumulative damage. That's my take on it. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, when you take an internal combustion engine, you spin it up to like $7 grand, and you hold it there. There are harmonics, crazy harmonics.
There's actually high-speed cameras showing stretch, and they dance, they move. You can actually see patterns, but it takes time. It takes an endurance race to uncover that problem, and then that oil wedge over a period of time eventually causes a bearing to spin. But if you don't run it hard enough, long enough, 2-bolt mains are fine.
Well, the cap, what will happen is the cap. Well, so beyond harmonics, you get to a level called noise, where it's like ultra high frequency harmonics, and that's what loosens bolts up. That's what, and when you combine noise and the harmonics and vibration and heat and torque, right? Just the simple aspects of it, it's distorting the bottom. The crank is trying to do this in the block. The block has to resist it. The block is being bombarded with these high-speed, high-frequency vibrations, and the cap will start to walk until it loosens up the register that it sits there. Because every main cap sits down into the block into a register. So if you only have 2 bolts holding that cap steady, it'll eventually loosen up. It'll walk back and forth until it loosens up the register. And at that point, the cap will twist. A bit of the bearing will touch the surface of the crankshaft. It gets hot in the blink of an eye, and that's it, spun bearing. Yeah. So that's why the extra set of bolts is to combat that high speed. Exactly what Steve was saying.
Yeah, and to back, the race, the Hemi was designed for the Daytona 500, round and round in circles, and that's why the cross-bolted mains came in there. I mean, the Maxwell was fine with, and it's funny too to think. This is a crazy thing. In 1971-72, when NASCAR waged war on the Hemi head, restrictor plates, that kind of stuff, a lot of racers, Petty included, used Hemi blocks modified to accept wedge heads. So if you ever see like a Petty's 73 Roadrunner or his Charger or whatever, look at the big block. It has a square end for the Hemi, but it's blocked off from the oil restraint. But it's a cross-bolted main block with wedge heads on it. And they're wide open max wedge heads too. So interesting, that whole realm. People.
Well, the 427 Ford was cross-bolted also like that. Yeah. And I did a thing. I did a lot of Hemi back in the 90s. I did a lot of Hemi stuff for all of the different the Chrysler magazines, and one of the things I did was about the cross bolts. And if you take so the original cross bolts on Hemi block are 3/8 coarse bolts, right? Yeah. And one of the common modifications is to open them up to 7/16, and some people even go to 1/2 inch. And what I showed in that, right, was that even if you take 1/2 inch cross bolts and you torque them to 100 foot-pounds, you could still take a hammer, just tap lightly on the cap, and the cap will move.
Yeah.
So the cross bolts actually don't do anything to hold the cap into the block. All they do is keep it from vibrating.
Yeah. Stiffens the box section of the bottom end.
That's all it's doing. Soaking up the harmonics. We're transferring the harmonics to the sidewall, the sidewalls of the block, so that it can be dispersed more evenly instead of focused directly on the cap.
Ever study a Ford FE 427? Those spacers with the numbers on them.
I built.
Yeah,
like built a sidewall 427.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they work, but holy smokes, the spacers are specifically machined. Don't mix them up. They got numbers in them, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, wow, it's in question with spacers. They relied on good machine work. You hope it really was that good. Usually it was, obviously, but a lot of the Hemis were notorious. You got to blueprint those things. You take that 68 Hemi Dart motor, don't take it out and build it. Like Joe Gill, people like that made good money, blueprinting, race Hemis. They were kind of ready to go. Like a Roadrunner, you weren't going to push that motor hard enough to really blow it up. But of course, there was an issue with certain rod bolts early, intake manifold bolts, the embrittlement or whatever it was, the manifold bolts breaking off and going into the plenum and into the intake port. That was an issue. But anyway, I know where I'm going with that, but it's somewhere.
Okay, let's talk about mysterious Chrysler parts, because I came across something today. I'm doing this, I'm 60 years old, well, 59. I'm doing this since I'm 15 years old. And I saw something today that not only perplexed me, I have never seen or heard about it before. Now, you tell me if you've ever seen this.
Okay.
An A-body 8 3/4 rear, a housing, with a factory installed drain plug.
Huh, I've never seen that. No. I will say this. My Hemi dart, I will say this, when I built that out in California at stage 5, I had Eric Hansen drill a hole, put a bung in it with a flush-headed Allen screw so I could drain it before changing 8 3/4. I did that myself. Was this home built or was it factory? That's the question. Did somebody put it in or was it? Because I built one of those. And it's out, here's the crazy thing. That axle I took out, I sold it at the Woodley Park Spring Fling. I put a Dana in the car. So that axle might be out there making people think the fact did that. Is that what we're looking at? No, right?
Okay, well, this has the
So
bung welded to the inside of the housing.
Yes, we welded a bung in there, drilled it, tapped it, and put it. Yeah.
And it's recessed.
Okay.
On the outside, it appears completely factory. I mean, it may very well be. I remember, I put drain plugs in them too, but I would always just use a pipe plug.
Yeah, yeah.
I always just tap them and run a pipe plug in there. Back when I was a kid, I would be swapping rear ends all the time. That was the easiest way to do it. So drill it, tap it, put a pipe plug.
Yeah, it's paintable.
No, this has an Allen head bolt, right? Into a welded bung, and the bung is welded on the inside of the housing, not the outside of the house.
We did that at stage 5 on my Hemi dart. Eric welded up. Now I'm not going to say that I'm the only one on the planet to do that, but if Chrysler did that, wow! But I've never seen one. But it makes sense because you undo the bolts and then you knock it and you break and then here comes the waterfall, the waterfall of gear lube. You can drain it out. That's awesome, But that axle was sold at the Woodley Park Spring Fling, just an A-body empty housing. It might have wound up someplace, but
maybe it's the housing that we got. Yeah, I had never seen. I thought maybe perhaps it might have been like a D dart thing or a 68 Hemi dart CUDA thing where it was
is your axle clean and painted black? Or is it rusty? It's a New England piece, or is it old? Or is it
clean and painted black?
Huh? Are the leaf spring pads moved in for inboard leaf springs?
No.
Okay, this ain't it then. Because it's something you could do. We just took a piece of it was just a hunk of a steel sleeve, thick. Eric welded it in and then cut it and tapped it for a plug. But it was inside. It was about that big around and about that tall. Welded into the bottom. You got to make sure it doesn't touch the ring gear. It can't, but you got to make sure it's not tall.
Yeah, like I said, I've never seen it done like that. I've seen it done countless times. I did it myself with pipe plug.
Yeah,
but I've never seen that. So I mean, maybe it's possible that it's. Like I said, well, it maybe because I've never examined a factory super stock package car 8 3/4 housing, and I'm thinking, well, perhaps the D dart, which is an 8 3/4, or the 68 Hemi dart Hemi CUDA, which is an automatic process 8 3/4. So perhaps this is part of that package that just hasn't been documented. But then again, it might have been just a very, very professional installation by.
Yeah, don't know. But yeah, I didn't want to have to go through that hassle of wearing that crap, the gear lube routine and stuff because we changed diffs on that thing a few times. But anyway.
What do we got? Anybody?
They're talking to one another.
They're talking to one another?
They're talking to each other.
Are they making fun of us because we're nuts?
No. No. Let's see.
So who's crazier, me or Steve?
I don't know. Somebody was asking about what's going on, talking about all this crazy stuff.
Well, it's Halloween. It's
Halloween. That's what I say. Have a little fun.
That's my excuse. Right. I like to talk about UAP.
I just saw a comment about this one right here. Okay. Michael, because we need to get this here.
Okay.
Michael, Steve, I just purchased your 1,000 muscle car fax color cover. I love it. I cannot put it down. I have to ration it so I don't read it so quickly.
Yeah.
Right?
Let me get the book. Hang on, it's right here. The thing
tell people where they can buy this thing.
Yeah. Well, here it is. This is the book right here. And the thing of it is, I wrote this book in 2013, and anybody who hasn't bought it, well, go ahead and buy it if you want, but you can get it for free because I now do a podcast, the Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast, and in fact, Donovan is the guy who tapes it, and we did 4 more episodes today, but the book was done in 2013, but if you just, Steve Maggs Muscle Car Show podcast, you can hear me read from the book. We're at fact number 810, I think, right now. We have 200 more to go, and we're done. But I read the book, and then what I do is I describe why I chose facts. And in some cases, I discovered typographical errors in my own book that have been in this thing since 2013. So as I read this thing, but yes, thank you for buying the book and enjoy. But if you want a new experience and you want to hear me read the damn thing, just log on to Steve Magnante Muscle Car Show podcast. It's free, Spotify, Amazon, that kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you for my.
And don't forget to shout out to Steve. Steve has probably the fastest growing YouTube channel. I've never seen anybody grow legs like you have, bro. I mean, you're doing beautiful. So anybody who's not currently subscribed to Steve's channel, go over there now, subscribe, hit the like button or the notifications, ring the bell, all that good stuff. Go there and do that right now. Right? That's it.
You know, Donovan and I, Donovan over here. Let's see if we can find him here. Where's Donovan? There's Donovan. I'll jump in here. Anyway, here's Donovan. And he's the I met his mom Sharon does my t-shirts and stuff, and she says my son wants to start a YouTube channel, and this is Donovan right here. So he's doing a thing called Gnarly Garage. But yeah, this dude here is largely responsible. And Donovan he's 20 years old, and a lot of folks say, what is the future? What's the future of hot rodders? Well, this dude here is pretty hardcore. He's got a 2003 Ram 1500, a 2006 Mustang, I think it is, something like that. 2007 Mustang. He's got a Coyote motor he just bought to put in the thing. So,
Awesome.
young people hot rod. So anyway, I'll put the thing down. But yeah.
Well, are you going to do something on his cars?
We are. Yeah. We're going to do perhaps the Mustang might find some love. Hang on. I'll find this thing. But yeah, probably the Mustang will get some, and the pickup truck too. Maybe some Hemi stuff, 5.7 goodies, and whatever it might be. So yeah, I remember when I was at Hot Rod Magazine a long time ago. But there was this big thing, when is the next generation? Where's the next generation of hot rodders coming from? And I got to say, we're not in the 50s and 60s where every kid was a hot rodder, but there's a large undercurrent of people who are in their teens to 118 who are into cars, and they're out there.
In the 50s and the 60s. And the 70s, not everybody was a hot rodder, Steve.
Yeah.
We were the exception to the rule.
Okay.
For the most part, it was kids who would buy a Camaro, put a glass pack on it, a set of glass pack on it, shackles and air shocks to get the back up, wheels, and those kids are exactly the import guys, the import crowd. And I'm not knocking the import guys because I'm super impressed. But I'm like a Boosted Boys fan, right? So it's like I'm not knocking the import guys at all. But the guys who were the seamsters that the hot rodders of the 60s and the 70s, well, those are the guys with the Honda Civics with the fart pipe and the wheels that go like this. They stance them now. We used to do stupid shit,
right,
like jack them up in the back, and now they do even stupider shit, making the wheels sit like this. But real hot rodders, like real guys who really dug in there and got their hands dirty and everything else, they're still around, man. But they just do it a slightly different.
And diesels, a lot of kids are doing diesel truck stuff.
A lot of kids are doing diesels.
That's like heavy duty stuff. An 83-quarter Mopar is one thing, but a diesel truck, a diesel cylinder head, it takes a chain fall to remove, and these guys are messing with that stuff like it's nothing. That's pretty impressive.
I see a lot of young guys that are today's generation really doesn't get. Yeah, I know. Like okay, in the mainstream world, okay, we get away from the car world. Yeah, I get it. The skinny jeans, soy boys, and all this other stuff. I get that, But there's still a hardcore, young, 16, 17, 21, 25, 30-year-old. There's that these people live this shit the same way that we did. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of our generation just doesn't recognize it because it's not.
And I remember being. Yeah, I remember being. Yeah, I remember being a kid, and there's always this thing you become aware of. Somebody eventually says, kids today, right? Kids today. And that's when you're officially old, you start talking about kids today. Because, it's kind of a thing where it's just a generational thing, they'll never be like I was. Well, it's chewing air. It's not even worth thinking about to me because, there's been hippies back in the day who were great. They did acid, listened to Deep Purple or whatever it was. And it was the hardcore kids listening to Elvis and would beat up the hippies or whatever. That whole thing has existed, but they're all people and they all dig cars and whatever it is, but today, there's all kinds of people, and computers definitely, they sidetrack or distract a lot of kids and whatever it might be. But eventually, there's always going to be a core of people. And as long as, Detroit right now, they're making some of the coolest cars on the planet. And where we used to get like maybe, 27 Hemi Cuda convertibles or whatever it is, they made 3,300 Demons. That's 3,300. Let alone the Hellcats, let alone the hundreds of thousands. In fact, Challenger production since 2008 is about 500,000 cars. By comparison, the original E-body, there were, what do we have here? There was a lot less of them. The original E-body, 160,000 cars between 1970 and 74. That's a nothing. It's a nothing. So now there's so much raw material to trickle down in a high school parking lot for years. The 2005 Fox, the Coyote Mustang. So this problem is going to take care of itself because these cars are everywhere. And if they trickle down, it's just they're going to fall into the hands of younger people. I don't know. I think the problem takes care of itself in a lot of ways.
What do we got, Cap? Can we find anything interesting here? Larry Smith, getting back to UFOs. That's a great picture you got there, man. That's Landy's.
Landy, I love that Dana. Look at that Dana, that triangle. You talk about massive triangles in the sky. Well,
there you go. Massive triangles under the Charger.
Dana rear axle, I think, right there. That shape. That's always a Dana. That big monster Dana.
Steve, was that his 440 car or was that the Hemi car?
It could be either. I know he ran, but that's got a Dana in it, so it could be either. I don't know. The Superstar.
Didn't they have flip-flop paint jobs? The Hemi car was red and gray, and then the 440 car was gray and red, or something like that.
Yeah, that looks like the lightweight Charger match racer, but it could be anything. He changed them around a lot, but it's a beautiful car, though. I love that thing. It's cool.
Getting back to UFOs, there were a couple of stories I've read about UFOs being involved in the Chernobyl disaster.
Yeah,
that's the first I've heard of that.
Well, I know that generally there's a lot of talk about nuclear installations and nuclear. You fill in the blank in UFOs, and who knows? Well,
you had that thing in England at the U.S. Air Base in England.
Yeah.
I don't remember what that.
Rentham something.
Right, yeah, that was it.
No, those guys are still alive. Here's the thing. Those two guys are still alive who claim that they walked up and touched the triangle and went into suspended animation. They're on TV now and again. I don't know what they are or they are not. I have no idea. I'd like to sit down and talk with them, but I don't know. It's weird. You think those guys would be like government's #1 interview person? Grill them. Why are they not? I don't know. Either the story doesn't add up and nobody wants to hear it. I don't know. But the Rendlesham Forest thing, yes, that's what we're talking about there. And I don't know. So many stories, man. It's hard to say.
The most fascinating one I find is that whole deal about Eisenhower and the aliens.
Yeah.
In '54, and it
Majestic 12 and all that kind of stuff. And
the thing about Eisenhower was that supposedly he was at a dentist for 48 or 72 hours, whatever it was. He had a tooth issue.
Right.
But he was in California at Edwards Air Force Base. So there's actually a travel, like if you look at his itinerary from that, it actually corresponds with the date that he supposedly, you know what I mean? So like there was the story, he met aliens in 1854. Yeah. And there's a video of the flying saucers, or a film of the flying saucers over the White House.
Right.
And then later on, some researcher says, well, let's see what Eisenhower was doing at this time. And he disappeared for 3 days. And when he reappeared, he was at Edwards Air Force Base, where he was supposedly at a dentist who were having problems with his teeth, and he was knocked out. So it's like, the researchers they're on this stuff, man. They're trying to find every little possible loophole.
Another thing that happened at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, Gate C-17, supposedly, like 12 years ago, a 30-foot diameter disc was seen about 800 feet above Gate C-17. I went to Gate C-17 at O'Hare. I took pictures of the airspace over that. Apparently, people said there's a thing up in the sky for about a minute or two, and up it went and put a hole in the cloud. And I mean, that should have been like front page news. And here's the thing: apparently, the FAA said, "No, get out of here." Well, I guess there was a Freedom of Information Act request, and indeed, okay. Here's the transcripts of people saying, "Do you see that thing?" No, I don't. So interesting stuff. But I went there, and I remember I was standing there at Gate C-17 in Chicago, taking pictures, thinking, "I wonder if I'm an idiot or a geek taking pictures." And when I was there, Gate C-17 was closed for repairs or rebuilding or something like that. But I got my camera out. It was just a gate, up I went. There's nothing. But supposedly this thing was floating over Chicago, which is like kind of in a controlled airspace. You don't really want things floating around with this. Passenger jets landing and taking off. Are you kidding me? But this thing was there. You heard about that. You know about that, right? Gate C-17. Yeah, it was kind of weird. But I went there. I took pictures, and I'm still here. I didn't cancel. Kind of weird. But, it's just these things, they happen, and then it's the next day. Kind of weird.
Have you heard this story? Desert Ranch girl, Jackie Gleason met them too.
That's right. He was hanging out with Eisenhower. That's right. Supposedly.
No, he's hanging out with Nixon. See,
Right.
here's the okay. See, now this is you don't know what to make of something like this.
Yes. He wrote about it.
So you guys aren't familiar, right? The story is that Jackie Gleason was hanging out with Richard Nixon.
Yeah, playing golf, hanging out, and do shit.
They were friends, okay? And this is in Florida. And Nixon says, they were talking about UFOs. And Nixon asks Gleason if he wants to see something, right? So Gleason says, sure. So they get in a car and they drive to this Air Force base. I don't remember which one it is. It's in Florida. And Nixon has all these security clearances and everything else. And he takes Gleason into this area and into this room, into this level, whatever it is. And he opens the door and there are glass containers with alien bodies in them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wright Patterson? No, it wasn't Wright Patterson. Wright Patterson was in Ohio. This was in Florida.
Yeah.
Wright Patterson is supposed to be where they take all of the wreckage when they recover one of these things. But at any rate, it sounds like a crazy, nonsensical story.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just Jackie Gleason and Richard Nixon just hanging out and they decide to go check out some super top secret UFOs.
Yeah.
But evidently, this had this super crazy effect on Gleason. And his wife said when he came home, he told her the story, and he was a different person from that day on. Like it changed his life.
Sad.
So
I could see it.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it could be kind of weird to see that. And where do you fit in? Well, everything you've learned or been taught, maybe if you have deep religious convictions, maybe they got to change them a little bit. Don't know. Yeah. Oh, Jeremiah. Okay, sure. Hangar 13. Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different places where these things may or may not be stored. Don't know.
Danny Ward says he says the story. I thought it was Hangar 13 at Lake. Okay, it might have been. For some reason, I remember it as being in Florida.
Yeah.
But it could have been. It could have been.
These things, they kind of blend into the lore, the legend to me. They blend together, and I take them all with huge grains of salt. But somebody said it, somebody lived it, and often there's a grain of something with that. But who knows?
Now, here was an interesting one, right? The Nazis were playing with
the bell,
hypersonic device. This is 1940.
Summer
of the war, right?
Yeah.
They were playing with. I remember they had that Werner von Braun there, who was like, he's a super genius, okay? And they were playing with hypersonic devices. So one of these things was called the bell.
Yeah.
And it looked like a bell, right? And evidently they were testing it at some point, and they sent it, and then they couldn't retrieve it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I may be telling the story wrong. Because again, I'm not a UFO researcher. This is things that I've come across. So the Nazis, they go full send on this thing, and then they can't recover it.
And that in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in 1960.
Yes, you know about it.
I say, I don't know. That's who knows? But it is true that the Nazis. There was the Sangers, a husband and wife physicists, and they had the thing they wanted to skip around the world on the atmosphere on this craft that would skip. And we're doing that now. But at that point in time, especially in war-torn Germany, the metallurgy wasn't there. You'd have to have some titanium, some ceramic, bricks and stuff like that. But the idea, the notion was certainly there. The Sangers, a husband and wife, aerodynamicists, physicists, whatever they were, the Sanger, S-A-N-G-E-R. Yeah, but now we have the Dinosaur and Dyna, S-O-A-R, and that's an old thing actually. But yeah, we're playing with that, always have. But to skip along the Earth's atmosphere to where you want to land that bomb or land that plane or whatever. So yeah, they're toying with that, but they didn't make it happen because of metallurgy with the lubricants. None of that was there in wartime Germany. But they certainly, with Werner von Braun, he came here. We dismissed him of his sins, SS history and all that kind of stuff. He helped put us on the moon. A brilliant guy for sure. And
he made Disney films.
Yes, he did. He
made Disney films.
Yeah, went from the SS to making Disney.
And I remember that when I was a kid. Actually, like when we were like real time, he was making them like 1964, 1965. And I remember watching, him explain how rockets work and all of these other things. But the thing about Gettysburg is that the story is, and there's no dispute that something landed there. And there's no dispute that the government actually sent, because the whole town saw this object come down, and they went into the woods and all this other shit. But then the government sent a team in, a cleanup team, and they went super top secret on this. They loaded it onto a flatbed and took off with it, and nobody ever heard anything about it. But all of the descriptions of the device, of this thing that landed, fit the exact description of this thing that the Nazis were playing with 20 years before.
Yeah. Well, I say to myself, I mean, it very well could have been a satellite that came down, a satellite, whether ours or Russian. That's not something you want anybody to look at. You want to just get that out of here to study it. And with that said, too, there's a wonderful video in Russia of a meteorite coming on in and breaking the sound barrier, causing windows to break. But I guess everybody in Russia has a dash cam for insurance. But there's this thing coming on in, and boom, and it lands. And I'm glad the world saw that, because that is probably the explanation for a good chunk of weird shit coming out of the sky. Meteorites, asteroids, bits of stuff. How
about the Tunguska explosion?
Yeah, right. Yeah. They say it's a small version of what happened in the dinosaur age, And indeed, that was probably an asteroid that exploded. Now some are saying it was a UFO that crashed. I don't know. I don't know.
It was a huge section of forest, right? So now so you talk about crazy stuff, okay? Now, and I'm not saying that I agree with this or I believe that this happened, right? But somebody put all of these events together at exactly the time that the Tunguska explosion happened. Tesla, he had built this giant Tesla coil.
Right.
And this was in where did he build it? Florida.
New Jersey, maybe? Or
Or might have been Jersey, but it was some
a compound.
So this is in 1908. Okay, and this is documented that he actually did this, and this was an experiment that he built and that he was going with, and he was going to try to beam electricity through the atmosphere to a receiver tower. Actually, I believe that the transmitter tower was like in Florida, and the receiver tower was in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Somewhere upstate New York.
Was it someplace upstate New York?
For some reason, that's right.
It could have been. On the same date that he tried this experiment is when the Tunguska explosion happened.
Wow.
And this researcher put it all together, and if you draw a straight line from the broadcast tower to the receiver tower and go past it, you end up in Siberia.
Wow. You never yeah.
So he deduced that Tesla accidentally blew up Siberia.
Well, I know that Tesla was playing with, instead of transmitting electricity through wires, through the air. But can you imagine being near that thing? How incredibly dangerous that would be. Maybe it was one of those things that nobody really, maybe it'll go to ground. Maybe it will go from tower to tower. But indeed, there was a huge 100-foot tall wooden tower. The feet are still, the concrete's still there. I watch those Mysteries of the Abandoned shows and stuff, but they show that kind of stuff. It's cool, but it has nothing to do with Martians,
Talk about Florida. Did you ever hear about this guy, I don't remember his name, the Coral Castle?
A little more. It sounds kind of familiar, but
okay. This was a guy, and I said I don't remember his name, but this document is real, and you can actually go there now and see all of that stuff, right? He was here's the story that I kind of remember. He was an immigrant. He was a little guy, he was like 5'2", right? He was a little guy. And he immigrated to the United States. He had a girlfriend back in his home country. When he got settled in, he was going to bring his girlfriend over, and she says, I'm going to stay here. So this guy was all kinds of distraught and stuff. So he started building this thing for himself, I guess, to keep his mind busy, to keep himself out of, and it's called the Coral Castle. Okay? So this guy built these giant blocks, all right, similar to where the Egyptians and so on and so forth. This guy built these giant, huge blocks and built this fortress.
Oh, this rings a bell. Yeah.
Out of these things.
Okay.
And he used no tools. Right? So he's got I'm pulling a number out of my ass. He's got a 30-ton block of coral, right? And he's got them stacked and fitted next to each other to build like walls and everything else. But the guy used no tools, no construction equipment, no nothing. And he would only work at night.
Huh.
He wouldn't work when anybody was around or make a see or anything like that. And he built there's a doorway that he built that is made out of this unimaginably huge solid block, okay? But it's so perfectly balanced that it'll open with a push of a finger. So if you push your finger on this thing, it just rotates.
Egg fault kind of door. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something like, this isn't speculation, like this is real. Like they got pictures of this guy. I've seen the pictures of him. He's just like this little guy with like an immigrant kind of hat, right? And just sitting in the middle of it, and he's got these huge blocks and shit like that.
And is it like a tourist attraction in Florida? It was for a
Tourist
while.
attraction in Florida now, yeah.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, there's got to be a way, an answer somehow, But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Elizondo Hold Ranch. Edward Leeds Allison or something like that. He used sound. Yeah, right. Evidently, he figured out some way to use sound waves to move these blocks and make all of this stuff happen.
Wow. Well, yeah. It's a mystery.
Yeah, let me see that here. Doug Rutley, look up the Nuclear Boy Scout. Kid built his own reactor here in Commerce Township, Michigan. A whole neighborhood became a super fine site and had to be abandoned. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, little plutonium goes a long way. I get it.
You talk about they talk about electric cars, okay? How and even today's cars. I'm going to get in trouble for this, okay? I'm going to get banned from YouTube, or the government is going to send somebody, okay? But I gotta say this thing. I don't care. I gotta say this. So, all right. EMP devices. An EMP will disable anything electronic.
Yes.
Okay? And all an EMP is just a burst of magnetic energy. Yeah. And even the cops have these devices now where they can stop a pursuit car. It's a directed magnetic beam.
They better be careful with that axe, Eugene, because if that thing wound up in a bank vault, it might open it up. So that's a piece of talent. I hear about that. Yes. Go ahead.
Well, but here's the thing. If you wanted to build an EMP device, a small EMP device, there are instructions on how to do it using common, batteries and capacitors and this metal and that metal and arrange it this way, and it'll send out an EMP blast, right?
Yes.
Yeah, a small one, obviously, but enough to disable a car. As everything has gone to this computer, what is going to stop mischievous teenagers from just saying, "Hey, come on, let's build an EMP thing and shut down"? You know what I mean? Shut down cars in the park in the shopping center.
Well, I guess the idea there is that probably the first person who does that is going to be the last person who does that until the next one. But it's like keeping an eye on hazardous waste. There's going to be
How would you catch them if, let's say, you put this thing in the trunk of your car? And you just pull up next to somebody and you throw a little blast there and you fry their ECM.
Yeah, I was watching a show on the History Channel. I think it was, Planning for Disaster or something like that, or whatever it was. They're talking about. I mean, there's no doubt about it that our adversaries, the Chinese and the Russians, who we should just hang out. But anyway, they absolutely have EMT satellites in space that will zonk and zap everybody's electronics, and Wall Street will shut down. And refrigerators it will cause a big problem. So it is true, our reliance on electricity and computers is a double-edged sword, the EMT and sunspots for that matter. There's a lot of electronic stuff that is random from space that could very well be a disaster.
Well, you had the Carrington event, 1859, I think it happened. Right? And that was one of them. And it's like people like, that could never happen. Oh, but it really did. You had the Carrington event. This was a solar flare that was so intense that it cooked the telegraph lines,
yes,
and
under the
set
water.
Fires all across the country.
Right.
Wherever there was railroad tracks, and they had the right of way, and they had weeds and shit like that. Well, this thing started fires all across the country because it cooked the telegraph lines.
Apparently, the transatlantic cable a mile under the ocean got burnt, probably at one of its ends. But wow, yeah, what a mess! It is true. Be careful what you build because unintended side things. But the good news is we're good at fixing stuff, but it would take a long time to repair. They say the transformers would blow up, and that would be the problem. Replacing millions of transformers on millions of telephone poles would take a long time. And apparently, transformers only come from two places, whatever. And there's not a lot of transformers. And is there a rebuild kit? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it could be a problem. So. Yeah, I don't know, but here we are, and meanwhile, that'll suck for you two because it'll shut it down. Can't at that,
Oh, just shut everything else out, so everything is relative, Well, all I know is I got points and a siphon hose, so I'm good to go, man. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, change those melted points, and hey, you're good, right? Yeah. Oh, well, finding a battery that didn't blow. Yeah, it might be a battery. Will batteries blow up with this stuff? I don't know. I don't know.
So let's grab a couple more. Steve, we're coming up on 3 hours. Do you believe this? But you and I can't sit down and just have a quickie thing.
Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're having fun. It's good. Yeah.
Let's grab a couple from our viewers here.
Let's see, Mr. Will.
Oh yeah, Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And
I'm really mysterious about that, but
that was intentionally set. We're throwing this thing out, and we can't stop it. Oh well, yeah, that's crazy. The ground's bubbling, and yeah. What can you do? I guess careful with that axe, Eugene.
Let's see.
Pink Floyd.
Do you remember when CB radios wouldn't work because of solar flares? Yeah, I actually do. That was a long ass time ago. That was like 1976, 1977. I remember that.
Was that a temporary issue, or did it?
Yeah.
Huh. So it was just one summer or a period of time when there's a lot of solar activity. Is that what it came down to? Or?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact details, but at the time, everybody had CBs. So if I don't know if this is all over the country, but in New York, if all of your friends had a CB, you were all on the same channel, and after you had to be in for the night, because of school night or whatever, everybody would jump on the CBs and yap with each other. Yeah. So that's how I remember that incident, and it was probably around 1976, 1977. And for like a day or two, the CB radios weren't working.
Wow. Huh. I remember every Trans Am and Corvette had a CB antenna on it. Remember that? Breaker. And that guy, C.W. McCall, with that song Convoy that was on the radio for all the, CBs. I remember I used to say that everything bad about the 70s Carcraft was vans, dune buggies, and CB radios. Because like Carcraft and Hot Rod would have CB buyer's guide. That's how bad things were. Because cars from Detroit were so weak, let's make it about CB radios. Why not? Because Cobra wanted to run ads in Hot Rod, so let's make it about CBs this month because they're going to put ads. Whatever.
The thing about the CB, right, was that what made that so popular was, you remember back in the day, man, every house had one phone, and it was like in the kitchen, and one of your parents was always within the earshot.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it was like if you wanted to communicate with, if you wanted to find out who had the drugs now, it's like you had to go walking around, knock the door to door, maybe all your buddies, what's going on, right? You couldn't find it. So once the CB happened, it was like, free communication. You know what I mean? So it's like everybody had to have it.
The first taste of social media.
Yep. Go breaker. Yeah, it was Centralia. That's the town in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. Yeah, yes, the burning. Yeah. I guess a kid fell into one of the pits. Well, I don't know. Yeah. He survived. I remember that much.
Joe in Michigan, there was a bad solar flare this year on the 4th of July. Anybody remember their phones not working?
Not me.
No.
I will say this, about, I guess it was, on October 10th or 11th, something like that, in New Hampshire and parts of Massachusetts, there was a loud thud in the sky, which made the news and stuff. It was either like an earthquake. I was in Texas, so I didn't see or hear this thing, but apparently it made the news. It was like a sonic boom, but there were no planes, not like that. So kind of weird. Shit happens from time to time. You just don't know what it is,
There's lots of places that have these weird noises, like the humming noise, whistling noises, buzzing noises, and it drives the people crazy, and they can never find the source of it, and then it just disappears.
Sometimes
that's been going on for years now.
Yeah, the bowels of the earth grinding. It's a deep earth. There might be kind of things happening that just crunch and grind and set up a vibration that we eventually feel on the surface. Don't know.
Okay.
Tatum wire Etty.
What do we got here? We got a super. I used tantalum, I've never heard that word, tantalum wire, anti-EMP fuses, and used all kinds of aerospace stuff. Look up the Carrington event. Yeah, we were just talking about it. If you are foolish enough to think solar flares are just petty. I know.
Great.
Yeah.
Alan F. Stop Pictures, thank you, sir. Happy Halloween from Canada. My car questions, is what is the difference between a synchro and a sequential transmission, pros and cons of each?
Huh. Well, terminology here, I guess what we'll say is synchronized would indicate a manual transmission with modern synchronizers as opposed to a non-synchro crash grinder kind of, 1961 earlier 3-speed manual. And the sequential, I believe we're talking there about modern semi-electronic manual gearboxes, which have a solenoid that bangs gears when you push a paddle. I would say that the sequential stuff, being modern and new, is able to shift way quicker than any manual with a synchro in your arm. But is it fun? I guess that's what I have on that one. Yeah, assuming the terms are what this fellow is asking about.
Yeah, they're not, Alan. They're not related. Like synchro and sequential are not. It's like they're not. It's like one is. It's like apples and oranges. You know what I mean? They're both fruit, but they really have nothing in common.
Yeah, one's a digital transmission. The other one is a way of matching the speed of gears so there's a smoother operation.
Well, that's what a synchro does. A synchro just stops instead of one gear having to crash into another to make it happen, the synchro just stops the action or slows down the action with a smaller area before it contacts the larger area and makes the shift go smoothly. Bermuda Triangle, in the case of the missing flights of the 1940s fighters based out of Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, I don't know. With that, I mean, the thing with that is, it's, I think it's just some airmen got lost, ran out of fuel, and that was the end of that. They had no GPS, none of that. And one of the things with each passing year, there's another layer added. Oh, they saw a vortex. And there was a plane that went after them that also tried to find it. That also got lost and was gone forever. The Bermuda Triangle, I don't know. It's a lot of.
I have seen cockpit videos of people flying small planes through the triangle. And they run into these magnetic fields, these magnetic storms.
So wacky and stuff, and
everything goes nuts. Everything goes nuts.
Yeah. I don't know.
So I mean, it's probably related to something like that. There's some sort of magnetic anomaly in the area that occasionally messes with.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what.
Time travelers. What do you think of time travelers, man?
Yeah, it's a tough one too. It falls into stuff that I don't think about that too much because there's nothing I can do to prove or disprove it. I always go back to me, the thing that I find really compelling is the modern era with the Pentagon acknowledging those 3 videos are real. That to me, that's the only thing the rest of it's missed. That's okay, but these things are not missed. They're somewhat tangible if we can trust the Pentagon.
Holy garage. Here's one. What about the Battle of Los Angeles in the 1940s?
I think hysteria, World War II, the Jap submarine off the coast. Start firing those guns, folks. People say there was a big thing trapped in the light. That photo's been debunked as being bogus, and it was probably a World War I dirigible. That image taken and applied and stuck into the LA thing.
But there were witnesses, right? The witness accounts is that they physically actually saw the object. And that the government, the military was firing at this object, and they could actually hear the projectiles bouncing off of it.
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess what I say to that is, we're the people. Let's get them back and interview them. A good scientific interview. I just never have seen anything good like that. That's my problem with that. It's too much mumbo jumbo about it. It's spoiled for me, But yeah, the Battle of Los Angeles was during World War II, and there's a lot of hysteria, and all of that kind of thing. But yeah. But yeah, I guess like 7 people died because shells came down on Los Angeles. But the Battle of Los Angeles, it's a thing.
Interdimensional travelers, there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to the idea that there might be alternate realities, and who knows, But
I'll tell you how I've always looked at this stuff, right? And it applies across the board. So whether you're talking about flying saucers or Bigfoot or ghosts or anything like that.
Which ones? Oh no, it's Nolly Garage. Oh, by the way, Nolly Garage, that is Donovan Manzaro right here, the Nolly Garage. So he's
Yeah, okay.
okay, all right. He
He's
just
trying to be a little funny.
all right. Here we go. All right. It's okay. So yeah.
All right. So here's how I look at all of this, right? And it applies across the board to the entire unified field of weirdness. So just plug in whichever phenomenon you want, and this is how I look at it. Let's just say we're talking about flying saucers, right? UFOs. Let's just say that 99.9999999 to the last fucking decimal of the reports of these things are either mistaken, out and out lies, hoaxes, whatever it happens to be, right? Wrong or bad or just not valid. It only takes the one. So if you've got 1 million stories of flying saucers, let's just say, right? And 999,999 of them are absolutely false, can be disproven, hoax, the whole 10 yards. If only one of them is real, it means that all of them are real.
Could be real. Yeah, I'm down. I call this book here is interesting. This is SETI. This book was done
Search for extraterrestrial.
Yeah, and it was 1976. And in this is some interesting. It says here, this is from government testing or their things. And this is a French thing, but they say that the phenomena is worldwide. That 70% of the cases, the phenomena was witnessed by at least 2 people. More adults than children reported seeing these things. 70% saw the UFO at a distance of less than 1 kilometer. 8 witnesses out of 10 saw round. 2 out of 10 saw elongated cigar. These are statistics from those thousands of reports, of which like 5% by Project Blue Book were unknown. In other words, not debunkable. And they say UFOs are red to orange at night and metallic color by day. Circular UFOs are between 10 and 30 meters in diameter. They are generally noiseless. The only people who heard any noises were less than 150 meters. And 1/10 of UFOs were stationary. 20% moved off slowly. 50% moved off rapidly, and the rest moved at exceptionally high speed. So it's interesting. About 20% say the UFO landed. So I don't know. Books like this are interesting. There's loads of these things. And sometimes they're compelling. Sometimes it's just somebody telling a book. But,
I mean, you get people who have been abducted and they've got implants. They've pulled implants. These little, and they look nonsensical. When you look at them, it looks like a little pebble, but it's actually metallic. And it's something, right? They dissect all of these things. There's people that have radiation burns. I saw this one woman. She had a UFO encounter. She was driving her car. And her hands were exposed, basically,
to the windshield.
And she had radiation burns on the back of her hands. Yeah. So it's like there are so many.
Yeah. I think I mean, again, that kind of stuff. I dismiss most of it as being who knows. But again, those 3 videos, the most recent stuff, that to me, that's right. If you hear David Fravor or Lou Elizondo, those are 2 voices, 2 sounds. When they speak, do listen. Now, everybody should certainly tune into Uncle Tony's Garage, but if you get a chance, Joe Rogan Experience, he does a 2-hour video with Commander David Fravor, who is the guy who, for 8 minutes, had his eyeballs on the Tic Tac, he and the co-pilot. And 2 hours, very compelling stuff, fascinating stuff to listen to. So if you get a chance, that to me is that I take seriously. The rest of it's kind of just mumbo jumbo. However, more and more of the stuff starts to add up when these facts come out. And say, that reminds us of the story that was told in 1947, and it starts to add up the clues. But I discount everything except for the more recent stuff, which does seem to have some proof, and that's what we needed, some solid proof. And these videos apparently, if we can trust the government, which we can, with some things maybe not so much, but I mean, I could just say that, unless it's a big, we have defied gravity, but my thought is that the steps along the way, look, we got a pencil to float. That would be headline news over the planet, let alone a 40-foot long white machine that flies with people or something in it, or even a drone that can do that. The steps along the way, technology-wise, would be huge news. So this is something that's different. It's fascinating. I think this is something I pay attention to. The rest of it, whatever. I mean, you can't prove it or disprove it, so it's kind of hard. It's frustrating. Smoke comes out of my ears, but not with the Tic Tac stuff. That's new and interesting. And again, I think if it was bad news, we know it by now. Knock on wood.
One of the weird, interesting things is that it was considered a national security threat by some guy that was.
Well, go ahead one more time.
Oh, my bad. So I remember seeing an interview where one guy was claiming that it's a national security threat, and that's why it's a government-funded department now. Again, I mean, it was originally funded earlier.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it's good and bad. Yeah, Lou Elizondo is previously a Pentagon guy. There's a thing called ATIP. It was a government-sponsored program to investigate anomalous aerial phenomena. They don't say UFO anymore because that's tinfoil hats. But Lou Elizondo left his post out of frustration. He said, "Here's the facts." He said, anytime they came up with a report, it was like, okay, whatever. Nobody took it seriously. And Lou, for better or worse, does say this. He sees it more as a security threat. Now, here's the thing. As soon as we start firing at things like that or thinking of them as something that should be taken down or utilized is the day I think that they prove what can be done or not done to a person who decides to fire at it. Whatever, they might be us in the future. Who knows? But with that said, yes, there are those who say that it is absolutely a security threat. And that's why we need to look at it. I get that. I do. We should know what they are.
There's one guy who was a government employee. I've seen this video I've seen him talking and explaining, the event and everything. And evidently he got involved. He got caught in between a firefight with these people, with these beings. Okay, and so this guy seemed to be really freaking credible.
Right.
And he had the credentials that he did work for the government. He did have the position that he said that he had. He had all the paperwork to show it and whatnot. And he also had these crazy scars. Like he had no fingers on one hand. He had like all kinds of scars all over him, right? And he claimed that there was at one of these underground bases where the government keeps certain aliens, whatever it was. Have you seen this?
I have not. But okay. Yeah.
Well, there was like a firefight that broke out between them.
Wow.
And there were a bunch of people got killed. He managed to get out. He had all, like I said, unless the guy actually hacked his fingers off and did all this other stuff just to make the story believable.
Right.
And then he mysteriously turns up dead, like right after he does this symposium. He appeared at some UFO symposium, did this speech, and then he turns up dead like a week later.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of stuff.
It is. It's interesting. But I guess if you get a chance, the Joe Rogan Experience, David Fravor interview. It's 2.5 hours. It's fascinating, and the guy doesn't seem like a quack, And I always say I want to meet this person. I want to hear him, and you can't fly to this guy's house, and not Fravor, but anybody who has a claim like that. It's just, and nobody seems to do that either. Put their feet to the fire and see what they really. It's weird, I don't know, but the videos seem to speak for themselves. They're pretty compelling.
Steve, we're over 3 hours, man. I think we got to pull a plug on this.
Right. All right.
This was fun, brother, man.
Yeah. Well, Tony, thank you. Yeah.
So, Steve, to plug stuff, man. Tell people where to go, what to do.
Yeah, well, sure. Just, the Steve Magnante YouTube channel every day. Donovan and I put another video up, and we did a bunch of stuff in the junkyard. Found some cool stuff. The K car, an Air Grabber 70 Roadrunner. Yes, we'll be talking about that in a little while. And then also today we did 4 more episodes of the Steve Mag's Muscle Car Show podcast. It's a free podcast wherein I read about a half an hour's worth of facts from this. It's free. YouTube, Spotify. Well, in fact, on YouTube, you can watch me read from my book. You might say, why would I want to watch you read your book? Some people care. But as we go forward, we will have some guests on the podcast wherein the camera will then make sense. But if you want to see the book get read, go to that. And the Steve Magnante YouTube channel every day, something cool and new. So subscribe. And of course, Barrett Jackson in January, I'll be there again. We're doing that in Scottsdale. It's Barrett Jackson's 50th anniversary, and it's going to be an 8-day broadcast, selling cars for 8 days, and crazy stuff. So yeah.
So you post every morning, because as I'm having my morning coffee, I get the notification.
Yeah. We did have about a 5-day gap about a week ago, but we hope to not have any more of those.
So yeah, guys, go over there, sub to his channel, ring the bell, make sure you like all of his videos. The likes are important. Because the YouTube algorithm, even if you dislike it, go over there and give him a thumbs down. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Either one.
The YouTube algorithm respects or it counts reactions. And it doesn't matter good reactions or bad reactions. That's why I love the trolls. the trolls are awesome because they don't realize, you click on the video, you watch it for 30 seconds, I got paid. You know what I'm saying? But you give me a thumbs down, great. The algorithm is going to send me to that many more people. So yeah, guys, go over there, give him a thumbs up, ring the bell, do all of that stuff. It helps him get it. And his channel's going like wildfire. You're doing great. Out of all the channels that I've seen get going since I started doing this, you're on fire. Wait until you see what you're gonna have early next year. Views tend to go up around the holiday season. People can't really do very much outside, so they like to watch YouTube in the winter. Wait till you see how your channel skyrockets in just
the one thing I'll say is, I enjoy doing this, but I love doing this. This is what I do. But it was frustrating to wait for a TV network to say we're doing the next episode, and I didn't realize that it was as far away as a cell phone to make these videos. So finally, it's dawned on me that my future's in my hands. I can't wait for a network to call me and say, hey, next season starts 5 months from now. Oh, great, we'll have to wait. So it's a wonderful new world. Anybody, if you have a story to tell, start a YouTube channel, share it with the world, and if it's compelling and interesting, hey, why not? Tell your story, and people will tune in. So thank you for watching, everybody who has.
Yeah, I always tell the viewers here, if you have something on your channel that's of interest, or you're trying to promote your channel, use this forum. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not trying to I don't want to corner YouTube. You know what I mean? It's like a rising.
There's room for everyone. Yeah.
So if and I don't want you to troll, right? Or what's the word I'm looking for? Blitz. You know what I mean? Spam. I don't want you to spam. The people who are here in our audience. But if you have something to promote, something that's valuable, by all means, man, tell people what's on your channel and get people to look at it. If you got good stuff, it'll take off. If you don't have good stuff, they'll let you know you don't have good stuff. So it's a good way to tune up.
The wonderful thing about this is that, yeah, in some cases, it used to be the decision makers who were there to green light or not certain TV shows they're great at something, but some of them aren't so great at running TV networks. I'll leave it like that. So those folks,
decision makers in the publishing industry and in network media all have to please their reptilian masters.
Yes, and sometimes they don't get it. Some of them wish they were running a sports network, but they're stuck at this damn car network. And why are you doing that? Do something else. So it's nice. We don't have to worry about that anymore. YouTube sets us free to tell stories and not held up, by folks who are in the way. I'll leave it like that. So I'm thankful for this. So, yeah.
All right. So Steve, thank you again. You let me know when you're ready to do this again. My audience they love you, bro. They like you better than they like me. So, and I'm cool with that because I like you better than I like you. So, anytime you want to do this, you just let me know.
Do that. A couple of weeks, we'll do it again. Let's talk 6 packs and 20 cars next time. UFOs are just a small part of interest. It's Halloween, but
Halloween.
Yeah.
So when's the next holiday? It's Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
My dogs are going nuts now. There must be something spooky.
Trick or treaters or ghosts, one or the other. It's a little late for trick or treaters. Yeah.
Thanksgiving is the next major holiday coming up. Let's get together and do a Thanksgiving show.
Yes, I'd like to. Yes, November. You got it. We'll do it.
We'll do Friday or one of the days in there. You down with that?
You got it.
And we'll talk cars.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Donovan.
Yep. Yeah, Donovan. Yeah.
Donovan. Thank you for everything you do for this channel, man. You're doing great.
Thank you very much.
The future of hot rodding, man.
Oh, I gotta ask,
go ahead.
because I saw your recent video. What's the plan with the dirt bike Sportster? Like, we seeing a jump or anything? What are we seeing?
Okay. All right. So my idea on this is changing. It's evolving as we're going. So the original plan was to build a true dirt bike, Sportster, using an iron head, motor. Now, last night, I'm remembering all of these things, and now I'm researching. So last night, I'm watching a video about the factory, the original XR750, which was based on an iron head. And they had problems with those motors melting down, right? But they didn't dissipate heat correctly. So what happened is the first 2 years that they ran that XL, basically the combination that I want to use, they had a lot of engine failures. So in 72, they went away from the iron head and they went to an aluminum version of that, and all of that went away. So I'm saying to myself, if I'm going to take this thing out and beat it up kind of like on a regular, and it gets hot here in Tennessee, so heat could be a problem. So I think at this point, I'm moving away from an iron head and doing Evo. But either way, it's going to be as bare bones, just naked, rude, and as you know what I mean, just a beast. You know, it sounds like a beast. But are you familiar with the XR 750s?
Right.
What's that?
Are you familiar with the XR 750s?
I am not, but I know about the dirt bike engines, the 250s, the 450s. I haven't gone up that high yet, but
Okay. Well, I was big into two-stroke Kawasaki's, 125s and 250s.
Yep.
And I came this close to buying a CR500, but I should have. Please, I don't want to talk about that. But I want to keep everything in the motorcycle realm within that Harley Davidson deal, just to simplify my life and keep it all. So I want every flavor of that particular ice cream. So that's why I'm going to do the sports and dirt bike. But it'll be a blast. And if you ride dirt, come on down to Tennessee, and you know, I'm sure you could break something on it.
yeah, bring my CRF 250R.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So guys, thank you so much. We're going to call it an A here. Everybody contributed super chat. Thank you so much. Ari, John, Fubar Zero are fantastic mods. You know, I don't even know which one. I'm so sorry. I kind of neglected our audience tonight. I don't even know who was here, right? But everybody who contributed just with conversation and your presence, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Even you for controls. I love you guys. Keep it up, right? Don't drop your game. And Steve, you know, you can do lives on your channel.
Yes.
So anytime you want to do a live, you let me know. You know what I mean?
Okay.
On your channel.
Works two ways, man, right? Yeah. You know? All right. Well, cool. All right. Thank you, Tony.
And everybody, thank you. Happy Halloween. And I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah?
Thank you.
Good night, all.